happening, everybody? It's Tuesday. Welcome to the show. Hi. It's the Jeff Gerstmann Show for Tuesday, June 17th, here, online, on the internet, live. Or, I mean, maybe not live, where you're watching it later. In which case, I hope it's nice there. But we're here now, and let me tell you, I don't know, we're here. Bunch of fires yesterday, but they seem to be all under control. So it's just just like, hey, okay, it's mid-June. Normally we don't really have to be crazy and worry about fire until like the end of summer, August, September, even in some cases, because it takes that long to get dry. But no, here we are. Here we are with acres and acres of brush burning up here at the start of the season. So that's been not stressful at all. But whatever, it's handled. It's a part of everyday life. I guess, as fucking insane as that sounds. But yeah, that's been going on. The kids are out of school and we're losing our damn minds. I don't know, me and my wife. It turns out you have all three kids at the house all at the same time. They want to do stuff all the time. They don't just want to sit in a corner and be quiet. You gotta keep them. You gotta keep them busy. You gotta do stuff with them. So it's they're off. So they're off at day camps and stuff this week, or at least for the rest of this week, and here and there over the summer. I don't know. I never really did any kind of full-on summer camp kind of thing. My wife did some of that, but the closest I ever got to it is that I think the Boys and Girls Club. No, it was part of a school thing. It was like a summer. You could take summer classes, and they offered them in a variety of subjects, and they were dumb. It was it wasn't take a math class. I think they did have some of that stuff if your kids needed that or whatever. But I would just sign up for the computer classes, and and that would give me 3 or 4 hours of access to an Apple II for a few weeks, which I didn't have an Apple II at home. So I ended up, because I did that every summer, and then the schools had Apple IIs. I still have it. I had a box of Apple II discs, games for the Apple II and stuff that I could bring in and play on their computers or whatever. One summer, I think the teacher was like, "You were here last summer, and you already know all this stuff, so you just want to fuck around on the computer all day." Yes, that is precisely why I'm here. Let me fuck around on the computer. But I don't know, they had an oscilloscope, and I got to fuck around with an oscilloscope and just weird shit like that. But it was always it was a bunch of weird classes too. One of them was, and this was the year our house flooded, so it was I wasn't able to go to all of it. But one year I took a class called Star Wars and Dinosaurs, which just seems I don't know, sign your kids up for this and they'll fucking look at shit. Here's an X-Wing and here's a Tyrannosaurus Rex. I don't know. It rhymed. I could see why a teacher or someone would come up with that and just go I don't know, man, just fucking idiot little kids love that shit. And yeah, I don't know. There was a play at the end of the thing. They did a little, we acted and I did all the rehearsals for it and everything, but I wasn't there for the day that we were supposed to do it. Someone had to fill in. I don't know what happened, but it's because our house flooded. I was, not there for the final class, so I did not get to perform. So it's a sad story is what I'm saying. But I don't know. That's kind of how I said. That's kind of how I spent most of my summers as a kid. Was signing up for these classes until they wouldn't let me anymore. But it was science classes, and here fuck around with magnets and oscilloscopes, and I'd put a nail into a lemon or potato or whatever, and all of that sort of stuff. And it was fun, man. I don't know, like it was a decent way to, and it was like, it was only in the morning, so you know, like it was done with it by like noon or 1 or something, and then had to spend the rest of the day at my parents' place of work, which was, you know, it was fine. I learned different things there than I learned in the class. But yeah, that's been kind of how stuff's been going here. I still have not let the kids see the Switch 2. In fact, and like part of that's because, you know, they just have been riled up and crazy and all of that. But also, I keep forgetting it exists. Like the thing I thought was going to happen happened, where I hooked it all up and I tucked it in behind my TV, which is, you know, here, let me move this microphone. You can maybe see. It's those cables behind the TV are leading to the Switch 2, and yeah, yeah. Turns out I don't want to play Mario Kart, so I don't know. I have not turned it on since a couple of days after launch day. We did that stream, and then I played a little bit more Mario Kart after that, and then was like, this sure is Mario Kart, and I have not touched it. So and that's, yeah, I don't know, I keep forgetting it exists. So maybe when more games come out, I will want to play more with it. And yeah, but right now it's kind of putting into that like, I don't think this is this way for everyone, you know. But for me, it has been like that phone launch. It has been like that, like, yep, here's this more powerful thing that it does all the same stuff, and you're like, cool, man. Except in this case, I wasn't doing any stuff on the old one either, so it wasn't like I was like, oh, and now it runs better. It was just like, yeah, I don't know, that's cool. I was not currently playing any Switch 1 games, so yeah. That's probably fine, right? Whatever. I mean, it's selling a gangbuster. You know, like I think we even said pre-release that was just like, yep, this thing's gonna sell just fine, and all that. But I do think, you know, I do think there's like a little bit of pressure. I don't know, pressure is maybe not the right word, but I think that Nintendo needs to have a good, solid holiday season. You know, there kind of has to be more games for this thing. Like it just doesn't feel like yeah, I don't know. You know, Donkey Kong will be interesting. I think, like I said last week, that I've heard some relatively mixed things about that game, and then, you know, you got Kirby and Pokemon. You know, like that stuff will do fine. But like, I don't know, is that the right stuff for the number of Switch 2s that have been sold? Are those the right games for the crowd of people that are early adopters or whatever, you know? Is that going to be the right lineup for those folks? I guess at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because Nintendo already sold the consoles to them. So ha 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 ha. But yeah, you know, it's comparing it to the Switch 1 and going like, man, like Breath of the Wild and Super Mario Odyssey are both, I feel like, pretty landmark moments for those franchises. Breath of the Wild more so than Super Mario Odyssey, I suppose, but like Odyssey was a fucking fantastic game. So to have like those kind of like, you know, pillars, you know, that helped you feel like, okay, they are pushing things forward here. You don't really have that as much here. I mean, and not to say that Mario Kart is doing like nothing or whatever. Like it's, you know, it is doing the open world stuff, and you know, they'll add to it. And of course, Mario Kart, just from a pure business perspective, has been, you know, their number one seller for generations of consoles, right? So, you know, I'm sure Mario Kart will do absolutely fine and whatever, but like I could not be less interested in that game. From like the open world stuff that I hoped was going to be a lot more than it was such a huge letdown there for me. that it's just like, okay, well, whatever. I don't want to play proper Mario Kart. And it's cool watching the videos of people just like flipping and doing, like all the crazy shit that people are doing, finding shortcuts and just like wall riding to this, and like the kind of that stuff that has emerged out of this game is really neat. But at the end of the day, it's like that's I still don't want to play Mario Kart. So it's just kind of muted, I suppose, around these parts. But like I am gonna let the kids play it at some point here. It's kind of like a break glass in case of emergency situation right here, I guess. But because they're off doing camp stuff, and but when there's going to be that moment of just like, okay, we're up against it. Like these kids are extremely bored. They need something to do. We got to figure it out. It is 101 degrees outside. We gotta, then I will bust out. I will, turn on the TV and let them see it that way. I'm not going to let them hold the console or anything because I don't want it to get broken. But yeah, I don't know. I'll probably pull the Joy-Cons off and let them play that way instead of like one of them having one of those. And well, I guess I could. I'll try it. I'll try the sideways Joy-Cons and see what they think about it. Maybe that'll be an okay way for them to play. I don't really know. It's weird. Yeah, I don't know. I hate I hate playing games that way, but I had decades of playing games a slightly different way, a normal way prior to that. So the Joy-Cons may be just the right size for them and all that stuff. We'll find out one of these days. Let's talk about some video games here on the other side of this break. A bunch of stuff came out today. And we've got there's a long list, and I think our last embargoed item from Summer Game Fest, we will also speak of. So let's take a break. We'll come back and we will get into it proper. Old underwear, they're the worst. It's the worst. You reach into the drawer and just grab something, pull it out, put it on. And then you realize, 15 minutes later, by the time you're far enough away that you don't have time to change, that, oh no, these underwear, they're completely blown out. This is a bad time. There's no elasticity in this elastic waistband. Don't live like this. When you pull a pair of underwear out of the drawer and you put it on, you realize it's old underwear. At the end of the day, or whenever you get them off of you, get rid of them. Get some new underwear and get some nice underwear for a change. I've got a couple of pairs of boxer shorts here from MeUndies, and they're fantastic. It is a very comfortable fabric up against the skin here, which is nice because it is form-fitting in the places where you want that. You want okay, I don't need a bunch of extra fabric just dangling all over the place. It's my pants are getting bunched up around. No, none of that. It's like it's good. It's like it's form-fitting, but then extra material where you need it, like up front in the balls zone. You need a little bit of extra space in there just to let things breathe. Let my people live. You know what I mean? MeUndies has a great design to facilitate that whole thing. And they're very nice and stretchy and comfortable and all of that good stuff. Great for wearing all day, which, I don't know. Again, I don't know if you know this about me, but I tend to wear underwear almost all day. It's a game changer. And these undies, they got a cut for everybody. 10 different styles ranging from boxer briefs to jock straps to special pouch underwear called the ball caddy. But if you need a little extra space up front, keep you feeling snug. And it's got that unmatched comfort that you're looking for. This ultra modal fabric is breathable, stretchy, extremely comfortable. It's ideal. It is precisely what you're looking for out of a pair of underwear. A pair of underwear that fades into the background. You put it on, you go, this looks nice. They got some fun prints and, they got some licensed stuff if you're into licensed things. But they got some nice prints all of their own as well. And you put them on, you're like, hey, yeah, that's a good looking pair of underwear. And then you put on whatever you're putting on over them, and then you don't have to think about it. It's just like, it's a nice pair of underwear. Gets out of the way, but if someone happens to see it at some point, you're going to be like, okay, it's cool that they're seeing these underwear. These are cool underwear. They're responsibly sourced, using sustainably sourced materials. They work with partners that care for their workers. And if you're not happy with your first pair of undies, it's on MeUndies. That's right. Yeah. They'll take care of you. So it's time to slide into game-changing comfort with MeUndies. And support the show. Go to MeUndies.com/Jeff and use the code Jeff to get 20% off your first order plus free shipping. That's MeUndies.com/Jeff. And the code is Jeff for 20% off plus free shipping. MeUndies, comfort from the outside in. I messed up and I reinstalled Phantasy Star Online 2 New Genesis. I don't know. I don't know how it happened. I was like, man, I wonder if, because Microsoft does those Xbox perks every month. And I was like, man, every single month there are items for PSO2 as one of those perks. And I was like, I wonder if they're still doing it. I found the list of perks and I saw like, oh yeah, look at that. Yeah, it's still, like rare item rarity increasers or, whatever little kind of throwaway free to play, shove the gambling rate in your direction by 4% or whatever. And I saw them and I was like, oh yeah. I should reinstall it. And before you knew it, before I could stop myself, I had opened up, not even Steam, I had opened up the Xbox app and reinstalled it from there because I'm like, well, I should see if they added any new achievements to it. And they had, and I got some achievements and I explored my creative space, which is like player housing, but it's an island and you can design it. And I was like, I don't want to do this. I'm not interested in this at all. I want to go shoot things. And I went and shot a couple of things, scattered some enemies to the four corners and felt better about myself. And then I have not gone back to it, but it is still there, threateningly so. I do not have time for this. There are so many other games that need to be played that I do not have time to even be reinstalling PSO2 right now. But man, that happened. But mostly I've been playing Tron Catalyst, which is out today. This is from Bithell Games. This is the follow-up to Tron Identity, which came out, was it 2023? And Tron Identity is a visual novel kind of thing, and I'm never gonna be a visual novel guy. I tried to get into it, and the story I thought was fine. It was just like some of the ways in which it was told, and some of the pacing, and some of the puzzles that they kind of put in there between it. Like I think that thing just didn't line up the way that I wanted to. But at the same time, like at the end of the day, it is still a visual novel, and there's just, I don't know, man. I liked choose your own adventure books just fine, but visual novels, I can't. It's just, maybe it's the production aspect of it, of like static image and text, that it's just like, I don't know, like the medium is capable of more. And, for budgetary reasons, a lot of visual novels are not going to do more than that. But I think if all visual novels were actually FMV games, I would be more receptive to the concept. If there was just, it's almost just like a production budget kind of thing where I'm like, I don't know. What if instead I think the feeling I get most often when doing visual novel stuff is like, man, I could be reading an actual book right now, and I'm not doing that either. So why am I doing this? And that I would just almost rather just see this in proper book form than having it be Yeah, Bryn. Yeah, if it was just available on iPad, maybe that would be, maybe if more of that stuff was just like on an iPad, maybe that would be like a better way to do it. Because it is just such a light thing conceptually most of the time. You know, just your level of interactivity. I mean, I don't mean the genre itself. It is what it is, but whatever. Point being, I'm at this point have accepted that I'm probably just never going to be interested in visual novels past a certain point, you know. At the time that game was announced, I heard that there was a second game, that there was another thing happening, and Tron Catalyst is that second thing. It is the larger in scope follow-up to Tron Identity. It is a game set, it's like, well, you know, centicycles, or, you know, like, but it is something that is, you know, it takes place in the same universe but significantly after the events of the first game. You don't necessarily need to know that to enjoy it, as there's a couple of good throwbacks to Query and Cass, you know, the characters from Tron Identity. And so if you have that knowledge, you'll go, ah. If you don't, you'll be like, huh. You know? This is an isometric action game. It is not, just because it has the Diablo camera angle and stuff, it is not a loot game. It is not, you know, you are not leveling up. You are not, you know, it is an action game. And it is still like there is still a lot of kind of static image cutscenes. Some of them are voiced, some of them are not. There's a lot of stuff that is not voiced. But this is a game where you drive a light cycle around a town and you ram it into enemies and straight up de-res them, and it's fucking awesome. And you can lay down the line behind you and take out other light cycles if you're fighting other light cycles, but just dudes. You can just crash into dudes in your light cycle and just be like, fuck you. And it's great. And they put, all right, all right, well, okay. They put a drawbridge into the city in this game specifically so you can just do a sick fucking jump on your light cycle as you're making your way around town, and it's rad. It's like whoever thought, it was like, we should make sure that there's a drawbridge that's always up in this town, so that players can jump off the drawbridge as they're racing from one side of this town to another. It was a good ass idea. Whoever did that, good ass idea. This is a game about time loops. This is a time loop game. This is a game where, you know, you are kind of completing events and then looping and doing it again. But it is not a game where you are trying to get the perfect loop. It's not a game where you're like, oh, I need to go here and do this, and I need to master this, and, you know, I need to get better at this because I need to be faster and do this, and I need to set these chain of events. And instead, it's a game where you are going through a loop, learning something or getting access to something like keys and shortcuts and things to open doors or whatever. And then you are rewinding back and doing something differently with that new knowledge. And they have a lot of fun with this on the story side because you are constantly meeting people for the first time. And sometimes these people know that you are glitched and you are having these loops or whatever. And sometimes you are approaching them for the first time and they're just like, what? And there's actually... It's funny because it by the time you get tired of hearing the story get told more quickly and more quickly, there reaches a point near the end of the story where the dialogue just becomes, you hand them your disc and then they look at it and go, oh shit, you're looping through time. It's like, yes, like they found ways to reduce that story down over and over so that you don't have to get hit over the head for it. It's not a game where you're having the same conversation 20 times over the course of the game, you know, like they're smart about it. And I think that's awesome. But it's fun because, you know, you are getting to kind of see things from all perspectives, and it turns situations, because all of this is kind of temporary in the grand scheme of things. Sometimes you need to learn something that, like, from a faction that you are technically allied with, but they have some secrets upstairs. And so you're like, well, okay, in this quest, it's a pretty linear game, despite the time loop thing. It's like, on this quest, I'm going to go over here. I'm going to kill like 100 of these fucking dudes that I'm friends with, getting to the top of this tower or doing this or whatever. And then it's fine. We're rewinding it, and none of it happened. Yay. And so it lets you kind of see the political tensions and the conflict around this environment from all sides, because you're going through things once with these guys as your enemies, and then you're learning something and going back way later and joining them in, you know, as part of this struggle. And the time loop aspect of it is really well done. And that stuff's great. It's that stuff is really fun. Seeing the kind of characters that you meet along the way, and the game does a really great job near the end of kind of wrapping it up, of like, you know, you kind of make your way through all of these events, and then it's like, okay, now we need to figure out how to actually win. And it kind of sets you on this much larger quest that takes you back through a lot of things that you haven't seen in you know, since the beginning of the game, and you get to rethink a lot. It's very cool the way that they do the way that the time loop stuff is handled. It's done intelligently. You can also restart a loop at any time if you're just like, oh, I you know, it's almost like a respawn. Like, oh, I fucked it up and I needed to die and start over. You can just hold in the right stick to rewind it. And if a quest is something that you can't do in that time loop because the thing you're trying to do already happened another way, it'll say, you know, hey, currently inaccessible. And so you can rewind time and go do it a different way next time. And I think that stuff is done really well. And so really, like, this game's about three things. It's about, you know, talking to people, learning the story, having these kind of playful, fun moments with these characters, going from place to place, and fighting. The fighting is fine. The fighting is fine. It is an action game. It is real time. You have an attack button where you're doing melee attacks, swinging your disc around. You can throw the disc at people. You can roll out of the way of things, and you can also parry. You can block or parry attacks. Later on, you get a few additional options where you can kind of suck abilities out of enemies for a limited amount of time, and it's like not that useful, because by the time you get to that point in the game, you have probably put some points onto the skill tree. The skill tree is not huge. It's like 12 things. It is not some deep, you know, multi-page, you know, sphere grid or whatever. It's just like, hey, do you want to be able to parry your own disc when it's coming back at you so you can kick it back out to hit a few more enemies? And like, that sounds kind of cool. But there are two items on the tree, one of which greatly widens the parry window, you know, because it's a timed button press. You're hitting like the Y button or triangle to parry an attack. And so you can widen that window to a very easy, it becomes one of the widest parry windows I have seen in a long time on the other side of that upgrade. The other upgrade makes it so the damage you do when parrying is greatly increased to the point where most enemies die in one hit. Like, you hold down the parry button and you fucking blow them up. And so, like, there are some things in the combat and stuff you can do where you're like, okay, well, yeah, I can suck the ability out of this guy, and now my discs do more damage when I throw them. Or now my melee attacks do more damage for 5 seconds. Or like, I sucked the hammer guy, and now I have slow, strong melee attack. Doesn't matter, because you bought those two parry upgrades, and so you are just hitting that button like as soon as you see any kind of attack glint coming at you, they are attacking. Like a half second later, you are parrying the shit out of it and blowing them up. The final boss in this game, you beat him with one hit from the parry. It's a lot. When the upgrade says kills most enemies in one hit, they're not lying. It's like You'll find a couple of enemies. There's one enemy that kind of floats around and spawns normal melee attackers, and then we'll have a shield around him. Like that guy, you kind of have to just run up and wail on him for a while because he doesn't really do a melee attack of his own. But like really, the combat on the other side of those upgrades becomes you walking up to an enemy to inspire them to attack. And then as soon as they attack, you're hitting the parry button, you are blowing them up, and you are walking up close to another enemy and making them do it. And so you'll get these timed challenges that'll get you more upgrade currency. And it'll be like, use the disc 6 times in this confrontation, or, parry 6 attacks, but sometimes it'll be like, finish this confrontation in 45 seconds. And I'm finishing it in like 8 because I'm just walking up to these guys, letting them attack and just going and blowing them up. And it's kind of awesome. Make no mistake, it absolutely trivializes 100%, 99% of the combat in this game becomes reduced to nothing because of how wide that parry window is and how effective the damage on that is. And so you really, they do a good job of making you feel extremely powerful next to these idiots. And that is something kind of nice about that. But I will say, if you're approaching this going like, oh, it's got real-time combat, I hope it's got this, or if you look at it, if you squint at it, you're like, oh, this is almost like these are the buttons a character action game would have. I wonder if there's going to be a branching combo set. No. It is not that game. Tron Catalyst is not that game. The combat is serviceable and it gets you from point A to point B, and it doesn't overstay its welcome, and you can but you blast through it. I played on the default. There is a harder difficulty setting. I don't know what the what dials it turns there to make it more difficult, but I found that to be, again, like satisfying in a weird, almost power fantasy kind of way. But also, again, like you've got this large part of the game effectively trivialized by this stuff in a way that like kind of, you're like, maybe if there was just more engaging combat in this, that might be nice. But whatever. You get into these larger kind of citywide situations, and you're getting in the light cycle and blowing guys up that way, and that stuff's actually super satisfying. But yeah, I found it to be a little strange that's kind of how that stuff goes. But it is a fun story. And it's a really good time. I had a really, really good time with it. I like the way it wraps up. Overall, it's a really good Tron thing. And I think there are a lot of really average to below average Tron things out there, or Tron is a fucking hard property. There's been a lot of bad Tron stuff in games, especially that I think are really hard. It's I don't know, man. I tried to get into Tron Uprising, the cartoon. It did absolutely nothing for me. I bought comic books. I bought a bunch of stuff it was like 20 years ago now. That I tried reading, just couldn't get into it. I like the movies, and I like the arcade games. And Tron Evolution is like kind of okay. Tron Evolution is okay because it is a kind of serviceable tie-in to the movie as kind of a prequel or whatever, and like it's all right for what it is. Tron 2.0 is dog shit, and I think people who like Tron 2.0 don't actually like Tron. Tron 2.0 is fucking awful. It was always like, it came out at a time when any first person shooter that looked different from all of the military stuff that was out there were people that were like, oh yeah, hell yeah, this is look at this, it's so different. But like the idea of like, oh, Alan Bradley's got his son Jet and he gets sucked in and does this, and oh, now you're walking, like, it's fucking terrible. All that fucking Mathria, it's fucking dog shit. It was always a fucking average at best first person shooter. This review took forever for me to write because I wrote like 3 paragraphs on how fucking Tron 2.0 is fucking awful. And I kept cutting it out, going like, it doesn't need to be here. It doesn't need to be, like, it's dragging down this review by wasting time talking about this terrible fucking game. Terrible is, it's average at best. It is average at best. It came out at a very specific time and like came out at a time when I don't think anyone thought there would ever be any Tron stuff ever again. So, which clearly, you know, like they fucking abandoned that shit and ran away from it. It was fucking terrible. Like the story stuff in that is so dumb. The idea of just turning Tron into a first-person shooter, generally speaking, is fucking dumb. It's so fucking dumb. But that's what so many games were back then, that like that's what they did, right? And so whatever. That game is ass. It always was. So yeah, I think that there is this kind of like rocky history with Tron when it comes to all of that kind of additional content. Though people have said really good things about Tron Uprising, and you know, like I've continually tried to watch it and just like it doesn't do anything for me. Maybe one day I will just kind of like stick with it and make my way all the way through it, but it's, yeah, I don't know. It's been very hard to ever watch that thing. But that environmental Discs of Tron cabinet, now that's a hell of a thing. I think that, you know, the original Tron movie, I think is hard to go back to because I think people, you know, like people now, you know, like the take on Tron is that it's boring, is that it's slow. And I get it. It's like, you're not wrong. But I think at the end of the day, Tron came out in, you know, 1982, and so much about it was the just the visual design and everything there was so amazing. That it, you know, that at the time when it came out, it was, you know, it was a hell of a fucking movie. And I saw it when I was 7, which always goes a long way, right? I think that's a great fucking movie. That movie became very quickly like part of my identity in ways that I still find weird. I've been thinking about that a lot lately, you know, because of this game coming out, and really just kind of thinking a lot about just Tron in general. And, you know, it was always this thing of just like, yeah, man, I mean, for me, it was very much like, man, if I could live inside the computer, that would be good, because, you know, like I, you know, didn't like being, you know, picked on at school or whatever else, like all of that bullshit. So, you know, it was just kind of like, that was the right concept at the right time for me in a lot of different ways. Tron Legacy, I think, is really cool. Tron Legacy, I think the reason I like Tron Legacy so much is because it just didn't seem like a movie that was ever going to get made. The idea that they were finally going to make a sequel to Tron, it kind of didn't matter if the movie was good or not, because it was like, I'm excited that this is happening, and I want to see. And I think, again, from a visual design thing, like they updated it really well, and, you know, the soundtrack's very good, and, you know, and it's just it's a very cool thing. It's not an amazing film, but it's a really good follow-up to Tron that I think, like, over the years since it released, I've only enjoyed it more. Yeah, I don't know. I thought that was a cool way to go with it. And now, and I kind of forgot until last night that they actually filmed Tron 3. Like they actually filmed it. It has a release date now, all of that stuff. Like, you know, the Tron stuff is just such a weird you know, because it's like so stop start and so many years passed and everything, and obviously this third Tron movie was a kind of different thing at one point. It sounds like at one point it was a more direct follow-up to the second movie, and now it's like, oh, it's kind of, you know, yeah, the concept is still the same, but we've gone a different way with it, and basically none of the people that you know saw in the previous one are in it. And I don't like Jared Leto. I don't think anyone does. And I don't think very many sane people do these days. He's just such a fucking creep. He just looks like a fucking creep. And I think that the idea of him being a computer man let out into the real world, he actually is, like, his creepy look probably makes a lot of sense to that. You know, like like his creepy look probably fits that concept of that whole thing. And I don't know, the red motif I think just feels very weird, you know, like it's hard not to look at it and go like, oh, they're making an evil Tron movie, which I don't, you know, like, you know, there's obviously the computer people let out into the real world is a super fucked up thing, and, you know, recognizers in the streets and all of that stuff is, you know, there's a lot of bad shit happening or whatever, and that's kind of what they've really focused on. But like the overall redness of all of the Tron 3 stuff so far has been weird. I don't know. I you know, I want to see that thing. But yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of got a very, but I think I was probably similarly hesitant about the second Tron movie in a way, because all those years had passed and you're like, I don't know. I think the only thing about the second Tron movie that I would probably change at this point is the CGI Jeff Bridges face. You know, like that's the de-aged Jeff Bridges is shitty. It was shitty then. It's only gotten shittier with time. And yeah, I don't know. That's probably, again, you know, it's the bad guy, so it's okay that the bad guy looks like creepy computer Jeff Bridges, but they maybe should have, in some weird way, they almost should have gone with an even shittier CGI version of Jeff Bridges. Like, it should have been like he should have looked like fucking Donkey Kong from Donkey Kong Country, but Jeff Bridges. Like, go even lower poly with it so it looks more like an aesthetic choice. About like, oh, well, Clue was programmed when the grid was at this level of complexity and blah, 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 you know, explain it away that way. But I don't know. All that is to say that Tron Catalyst is a cool game. It's got some things about it that, you know, I wish were maybe a little different in spots, but it is a cool game with a fun story. And I think that they do really right by the time loop stuff in a way that I think a lot of time travel-y kind of things these days, I think that as a concept, that used to be one of my favorite, like, you know, kind of post Back to the Future, like any kind of time travel fiction. I was like, ooh, fun. And I think that got driven into the ground at some point where it's just like, this all sucks. like all of this time travel stuff is being used for evil instead of good now, and it's all bad. But like, but this is handled really well, really intelligently. It's used in a way that like saves you time as a player, and also they don't use it as a way to artificially extend the game, or like, oh, you gotta fight through this confrontation, everything. You know, the only thing I would say is that there is a guy who is effectively like, he's guarding a checkpoint going into the city, and for the entire game, and it changes a few times due to story reasons, but like every time you go into the city, you got to stop and go through a little quick dialogue with this guy. And by the time I had done it, you know, for the 20th time or whatever, you know, getting close to the end of the game, I was like, man, I wish I could just fucking kill this guy and lock it in so I don't have to do this anymore. And just walk into the damn city. But that was kind of the only thing, and that's a relatively minor thing overall. It's a cool game. And it is unfettered by the rest of Tron. I think that, having this whole idea of like, oh, this is the ARC grid, and it was a backup server for the ISOs, and Jeff Bridges set it up, and everyone thought he was going to come back, and then he didn't. And all of that stuff, I think, sets it up to be its own thing. The references it makes to the overall universe are good and meaningful and not throwaway and not like obligatory. They don't waste a ton of time on like the users or Flynn or like that stuff comes up. Tron is mentioned, but this is a separate story from a separate time, from a separate server. And I think all of that stuff is handled really, really well. And it gives this story room to breathe on its own without necessarily having all of the, the baggage of Tron and Tron Legacy kind of hanging over it. It really, I think it does like a really effective, a job of establishing itself as its own thing in a way that I think, and I'm sure that this has been, not the first time it's been tried. But again, there's just some Tron stuff I've been unable to engage with for various reasons. But I that idea of just like, hey, there are a lot of computers out there. There could be a lot of grids out there. There are a lot of reasons to tell anthology-like stories in the universe of Tron that just don't have a whole lot to do with, the events of the movie, and kind of using those as like big signposts about the state of the world, about like, okay, well, ISOs are this and this happened here, and like this is the state of things right now, but it's not necessarily tying into because of the actions of fucking Kevin Flynn's son, and because Ed Dillinger did this, and well, what about Ed Dillinger's son, and what did he do? Like all of the other horse shit that you could do. It's a lot of stuff that Tron 2.0 did, where they're just like, well, we're gonna follow on from that in the dumbest ways possible. Like it doesn't make those mistakes, and it's much better for it. And I think it's worth checking out. If you're Tron positive, it's definitely worth checking out. If you're Tron neutral, probably still worth checking out. If you're Tron negative, it is still Tron. And like I said, the combat it gets a little trivialized partway through. So I would not come to this going like, I'm looking for a great isometric character action. Like you're not gonna be satisfied there. But as a complete package, I think that stuff works really well. Also out today, FBC Firebreak. This is the game set in the Control universe, or the overall Remedy universe, but really it is most directly attached to Control. It is a 3-player multiplayer game with loadouts and jobs and skills and I would maybe say it's a little Left 4 Dead like in some ways. But also it is maybe you see a little bit of Helldivers in there, specifically in the way that things are unlocked and the way that it handles what you might think of as like a battle pass type situation, where it's like, okay, there's a pass you can purchase for real money, but then it's just like it's a bunch of cosmetics, and it's it's pages and pages of it, and every time you come out of a level, you come out with a handful of points to spend. And then you can spend those points on meaningful upgrades to your items, or your characters, or your classes. It is a class-based system, or cosmetics. And there are things where it's like, oh, you need to buy the full first page before you can go to the next page, and that's where it kind of gets into like a little bit of Helldivers territory in just the structure of acquiring items and cosmetics or whatever else. But yeah, it's yeah, it's in that same lane as like, yeah, sort of a Deep Rock Galactic, but you know, it's sort of a Left 4 Dead, sort of a, you know, that sort of thing. But there's I think FBC Firebreak is cool, but I am not sure if it is good or if it is long-term good. It's fun. You get in there, you get some kind of wacky jobs, you know, each mission kind of has its own task that you're completing. And so you basically have to go in, do the thing, and then get back to the elevator and get out is the normal structure of a level. But there's like, I think 5 overall missions in the game. Now, the missions do have some varying degrees of complexity. But it's so basically you can decide if you want to do a short version of a mission, which is 1 area, the medium version, which is 2, or the long version, the full version, which is all 3 areas. And so you're kind of going deeper and deeper into this level, and then you have to get out. And so if you just do 1, it's fast. It's 10 minutes and you're done. You're like, okay, well, that's okay. We did that. And at the start of the game, that's all you can do. You kind of have to play a mission on level 1 before you can unlock it at level 2, and then play it again to unlock it at level 3. And then eventually there are like additional modifiers and things that you can do to kind of make it even harder from there. The catch is like, these levels are not changing. You know, you are going back into this, like the first area of the one where you got to blow up all the sticky notes is that first area every single time. And the modifiers that you can eventually unlock if you're looking for a harder challenge, like, yes, you can, you know, more enemies will come at you and you know, there'll be some like, oh, something weird is happening. Like there are those types of modifiers, but at the end of the day, it is still you going in here and doing this. And I have done that first area of the sticky notes level 5 or 6 times now. I don't know that I want to do it again. I don't know if I care that, like, oh, we modified it so there are, you know, more like dudes made out of sticky notes, and oh, there's a crazy this crazy event happened, and like those things are cool, but the layout of the level is still unchanged, which for something like the oldest house, which is always shifting and changing, I think I had hoped that maybe, you know, the physical layout of the levels would change more dramatically when you rerun them. And maybe that's like a late unlock modifier or something, but there's a lack of dynamism to that I kind of just I have hit a wall specifically with the first area of that sticky notes mission, and I haven't played a ton of this. You know, there's more for me to unlock, and there is a long list of things to level up if you want to unlock all, because there are perks that you can add to your loadout. You need to buy the perks and research the perks and then equip the perks, and you can equip up to 9 of them, but you need to level up your class so that you can equip more perks, and you know, that takes time, and that takes this, and that takes that, and you know, and the even guns and your kind of class item, like the fix kit gets a wrench, which you can, you know, use as a melee attack, but you can also use it to fix things faster than the other 2 classes can. And you know, you can level up that wrench so that it does a more propulsive attack, or you can level up the jump kit's shock gun to shock more, or the water cannon can be upgraded at level 2. Instead of just shooting out a big blob of water, you can crank it and shoot out smaller blobs of water more frequently. And so the grenades even, I think, get more powerful as you level them up. And so everything's kind of got 3 levels to it. It's all neat. All of it is structured really well, and I like the look of it. And it is a game where you are fighting a horde of enemies, and then you get a couple of minutes of downtime during which you need to restock and also go try to complete the objectives that you're trying to complete, whether it's blowing up the sticky notes or like, oh, we gotta stop these exhaust, we gotta restart these exhaust fans, so we gotta get in there and fix these circuit boards and do this, or we got to shoot all the goo off of these big turbines so that they spin again. And then another wave rushes you fight them off, and you get a little bit of downtime. And so, you know, that is the pace of it. and then you open up the door to the next area and kind of do the same thing again, but in a different spot. Shooting feels fine. It's not like, it's not incredible. It's totally, I'm not saying anything bad about the shooting. It's fine. But it's not flashy. It's not, like, I don't, you're fighting the hiss and they keep spawning in, and there's more of them, and most of them go down pretty easily. They outnumber you. So, they're always rushing you. You will get these kind of larger enemies. You get the guys flying around on the office chairs. You'll get like boss fights where you both have to kind of like you have to have two players flip a switch within a certain time frame to, one of them is going to spray a guy with water, the other one's going to shock him, and then after you do that, then you can do direct damage to the enemy with your guns, and then you repeat that 2 or 3 times until you complete it. And it has a variety of weapons, submachine gun, shotgun, bolt action rifle, like that sort of stuff, and all that stuff is fine. I think my issue with it, or the part I'm like less certain about, I guess, it's not even necessarily an issue. It really is just a feeling of like, I feel like I am using up the content in FBC Firebreak, and I'm not sure that I want to do some of it again. And so that's been my issue with it so far, has been like, there are, and this is stuff they're going to add 2 more levels to it before the end of the year. So that's good. If they can keep up a steady pace of those types of upgrades, that's cool. But like, it's got 5 levels in it, and one of them, between playing it once or twice in a beta and now playing it while it's out, I don't really want to do it. I don't really want to do that level again. And there's a lot to unlock, which, for people that want to grind on those levels and get all the requisitions and get all the upgrade points they need to buy all that stuff, like there's a lot there. Some of it's cosmetic, some of it's not, right? I mean, but like that progression system seems very slow at the start. And so I'm curious to see how that ends up panning out, because I think that that's the sort of thing that, like, the start of it feels a little slow in a way that, like, I wonder if people will just go like, all right, I just did this, I don't want to do it again. I have the exact same weapons. Like nothing meaningful has changed. The first perk is you can run a little faster. It's not, and so, like you're not really seeing the game change dramatically. But even still, I think, because I played through a little bit of it with everything unlocked at Summer Game Fest, and I came away from it going like, this is fun. This is neat. This is pretty cool. But I was kind of left wondering, like, I want, how's this going to pan out long term? And, now that I've kind of been off and on playing it, and it hasn't always been in full games with, people. It's like sometimes I've run it alone, which you can do. But like now that it's out, matchmaking is better and all of that sort of stuff. And so you can get in with people and if you are playing with friends, then you can split up the jobs appropriately so you all kind of have the right thing. Otherwise, you might end up doubling up on a thing, which is not the end of the world. But sometimes it's nice sometimes you want to be able to get a bunch of things wet and then have someone else step up and shock it. Because those end up being kind of status effects, but it doesn't, like, I think the thing is, the thing that's also maybe important to kind of know about this is, while it is set in the Control universe, it does not feel like the environments and the enemies you're facing and the vibe of it feels like it is set in the Control universe. But from a gameplay perspective, this is not anything. This is, they have completely rebuilt it. This is a first person shooter. It is completely rebuilt from scratch. You are aiming down sights and shooting. You are throwing grenades at stuff. You are dropping a bunch of office equipment and hitting it with a wrench until it turns into a turret. And then that turret is taking out enemies, giving you some cover to do stuff. Like it's, it is not Control. And to their credit, they have never built it as anything other than this. Like this is the game they've been making from the start. So, but I think some people here, like, oh, it's set in the Control universe, and they expect it to be that combat. It is not that combat. It is a completely different thing. I think that stuff is largely fine on its own. It really is just in the idea of like, am I going to want to rerun this limited number of levels again and again and again and again and again? I think for me the answer is probably not. I want to play more of it. I will play more of it. It's on PlayStation Plus and Xbox Game Pass. It's $40 on Steam. There's also a deluxe version that there's like a deluxe upgrade or something for the cosmetic. Like there's a cosmetic track. The Firestarter Classified Requisition, it is called. And what is that? That's $10. So in theory, you could get it on Game Pass, and if you want some additional character voices and a separate upgrade track of cosmetics to unlock, you can pay $10 for that. It's, again, I think it's neat. At the end of the day, like it's kind of cool, and like the idea of these guys who have to be like, the lore is actually kind of cool. Like, but it is all largely set up. It is all largely like, not a lot of that lore is in the game from what I've seen of it. It's like they tell you like, oh, well, the oldest house, like a number of years have passed since the events of Control, and these are the guys, this is the Firebreak. Like these when weird shit happens in the oldest house, they get out there and they clean it up. They get out there and they clean house. You'll find a lot of dialogue around the concept of cleaning house. And I think that's a neat idea. But like in game, what you really get out of it, kind of universe wise, lore wise, is when you're sitting at the menu, you'll hear like your boss, or you'll hear characters kind of talking over a loudspeaker, and they'll have some in universe little dialogue that is nice. But it's not a story driven game. It's not that game. Like it's not a proper sequel to Control. It is not, like it is straight up not that game. It's a multiplayer focused game that is meant for you to get together with some friends and kind of zone out a little bit and do stuff. And chat while you're doing so. Again, like, that's why I think I liken it to Left 4 Dead a little bit, because it is that sort of, Left 4 Dead didn't really have like massive, like live. This is not a live service game in the traditional sense, right? Like it is not something where they are going to be selling you gameplay relevant upgrades. They've said that like, oh, this is something, it's not something with quests. It is something that does have XP, and you do level up and you do spend points to upgrade things, and so there is a progression for sure. But the levels are the levels, like, and so in that sense, that's the part that maybe reminds me a little bit more of a Left 4 Dead style game, as opposed to, it's not Helldivers. It's not even, like there are aspects of it that I think you could liken to Deep Rock Galactic, but it's not quite that either. And so it is a curious thing. At the end of the day, you look at it and you're like, huh, well, all right. I don't know. Like it's certainly not a bad game on its own merits. I think that if you are expecting it to be an actual follow-up to Control, and not just something that kind of happens to be set in that universe and in that location, that I think that that's something that you'll probably find disappointing. If you're coming at this going, I loved Control and I want more of that, it's not much more of that, but on its own merits, I do think like the systems are solid, like the upgrade paths are what they are, and I think that stuff all works well enough. But for me, kind of trying to look at it on its own merits, it comes down to just like, yeah, I don't Yeah, one player gets the sticky notes all wet, and then we shoot them. I guess we're shooting sticky notes with bullets, or we're throwing grenades at them, or we're like it's fine on that front. I want to play more of it, and like I've had a decent time with it, but I guess I just don't think that. I wonder how many people will come away from it satisfied, and how many people will want to stick with it long enough to truly get through those upgrades. And how quickly? I think they said they would be adding 2 more levels to the game before the end of the year. And I believe there are 5 in the game right now. And when you get to the clearance level 3, and you start to be able to remix them a little bit and turn up the difficulty or turn on some different modifiers and such, like that stuff does make it different. But at the end of the day, it is still like, here's this level layout, here's these sticky notes, or here are these turbines, run over here, do this, fix this fan, do this, like it kind of like the parts of it that don't really change are the parts that kind of leave me thinking like, not sure how many times I want to do this. But that's that. I am always a guy that is like, having trouble like with like repetitive content, like as a means to like, oh, you got to level up and you got to do this again. Like I'm not. I don't like Left 4 Dead, for example. And that wasn't even like for leveling up purposes. It was just like, here are the levels we've got, and the AI dungeon master will make some changes. And you're like, yeah, that's cool. I want to play these levels once and never play it again. Congratulations. Like I just was never that interested in it. So FBC Firebreak, kind of drawing those comparisons for me, not a super positive thing. But that's out there now. And I think you should check it out. Like it's funny in spurts, in brief moments, in some of the same ways we're controlling. Like it'll pop on screen like, there's a major enemy has spawned, and then you'll see a life bar appear at the top of the screen, and then the name of the enemy will be like Megan Young. It's like John Sanchez. It's like just fucking people's names, and you're just finding them and shooting the shit out of them. It's silly, man. I don't know. I really like that about it, and all of the other stuff is very much serviceable, but I do feel like that those levels are going to wear out their welcome long before I get enough upgrades to make it feel dramatically different or like something I would want to stick with long term. But I am going to put some more time into it, and we'll see how it all goes. Let's take another break. We'll come back. We'll talk about the Gex Trilogy and MindsEye. Hot video games, right? Right? Hey, if you're looking in the mirror and you notice that your hair seems to be thinning out and you're not happy with that, you're not alone. Life just gets busier and busier. And sometimes it can feel like that there's just not enough time in the day to take care of all the things you want to take care of. And so, maybe it gets shoved in the back seat and you just don't really think about it. So, now, think about it. But think about handling it the easy way. Hims has hair loss solutions that you can get in the comfort of your own home. You don't have to jump through a bunch of frustrating hoops to get access to treatment. You can get it without even leaving your house. That's right. Hims provides you with convenient access to a range of hair loss treatments that work all from the comfort of your couch. Hims makes treating hair loss simple with doctor-trusted options and clinically proven ingredients like finasteride and minoxidil that can regrow hair in as little as 3 to 6 months. You can choose from personalized chewable, oral, spray, and serum treatments to find what works best for you. The process is simple, and it's done 100% online, so there are no doctor visits or scheduling appointments and all this other stuff. You just answer a few questions, and a medical provider will determine if treatment is right for you. If prescribed, your treatment is sent directly to you for free. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. Hims has hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, and they can help you get your confidence back too with visibly thicker and fuller hair. So check it out. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/Jeff. That's HIMS.com/Jeff for your personalized hair loss treatment options. hims.com/Jeff. Results vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil and finasteride. Prescription products require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if a prescription is appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for full details and important safety information. Stellar Blade came out on PC. I have been messing around with that a little bit. My biggest problem with Stellar Blade when it first came out on PlayStation, just not enough anime sex stuff in it. Just not enough latex fed. No. My big problem with that game when it came out on PlayStation is that the input, the latency, there was a real... I found it borderline unplayable at launch because of the way the game felt. Like input latency just seemed really terrible. And so I played a few hours of it, and just it was driving me insane. And so I kind of stopped and was like, okay, well, all right. I'm gonna go do something else because this is just not a fun video game. It's out on PC now, and it doesn't have that problem. I haven't gone back and checked, because I know that they did say that that was one of the things that was on their list of things to fix. So I have to presume that at some point the PlayStation version was got where it needed to be on the input lag stuff, but I'm starting over here on PC. It is a nice port of that game. They put out some DLC at the same time, so there's new stuff on PlayStation as well, I guess now. But I am starting it fresh on PC because I haven't touched it since like the week it came out, and it feels fine now. I don't know that I necessarily love Stellar Blade, but it is totally okay. And I don't know. It's ladies. It's ladies with their boobs separated by their ultra tight outfits, and they're cutting shit. And are you into that? Yes or no? I think you know the answer to that question already. I don't know. Like it's got like solid combat options as you go through it, and the upgrades are okay. And I think one of the things that they're selling alongside of it is like a variety of outfits, and so you want a nice kunoichi outfit, maybe show a little more leg. It does that now. They've got that. It's like, sure, why not? I'm not worked up about it on that level. It's just like, okay, that doesn't really do anything for me personally, but because it's video game ladies, and that's not, I don't know, it's not really my thing. In a world where if you just want to watch real actual ladies doing stuff, it's the internet, man. It's full of that. But yeah, Stellar Blade is totally okay. I think that it is the creepy weird designs of the enemies, I think, are sometimes ridiculous in ways that are not not my favorite thing, just design wise, but the way that you were kind of going through the ruins of Earth and some of the observations that your character has as she's going through it and stuff, I think that stuff's like kind of interesting to, like, from a writing perspective. I think some of that stuff is kind of neat, and the combat is fine. And so getting rid of that input latency, I think, makes that a much more interesting, a properly actually playable game, which I did not find it to be especially playable on PS5. Someone in chat said that they played it a couple of months ago and still found the input latency to be pretty bad. So I don't know, maybe that's, maybe that's something they didn't quite fix, but I think that game is totally okay. I don't know. Like when that game came out, like people tried to start a bunch of weird fights about it one way or the other. And it's okay. There's nothing like wrong with it. It's all right. If you're looking for that kind of game, I think that kind of game has been done better elsewhere. But like, we don't get a zillion of them all the time, and so sure, man. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, what the thing what I should do is reinstall Metal Gear Revengeance. What I should probably actually do is just reinstall that and play it again. Is play Metal Gear Rising again. But Stellar Blade is totally okay. The Gex Trilogy is out now. That came out yesterday. It is Gex 1, 2, and 3. So Gex 1 being the 2D game, and then, the kind of Mario 64-like Gex 2 and Gex 3. No one needs this. The Gex Trilogy is interesting because it is a classic game compilation the way that those used to be made, and in a world where Digital Eclipse is doing like so much more interesting work with collecting together games and additional material and stuff, like this thing feels like a relic on top of it being a relic. Like the bonus features are not good. It's got like a soundtrack player. And then they did an interview with Dana Gould. Like they sat down with Dana Gould and talked to him, but like it's chopped up. And it is not like, if it was just like, hey, here's a conversation with Dana Gould. Instead, it's like they did this, and I've seen compilations. I've seen like interviews on games where they tried to do this way, or it's cut like B-roll. It's cut like it. You know what? It is cut the way B-roll is cut. When they clearly sat down for a long conversation, and then they chopped it up into sound bites, and then you are on a menu full of questions about like, what is this about? And then who are you? And then it's a 4-second clip of him going, I'm Dana Gould, I'm the voice of Gex. And then it fades out. Like you see him continuing to talk, but it fades out. And then you go back to the menu and you pick the next thing. And then he gives an answer to that question. And then and like, it is such a fucking 20-year-old way to do this. It sucks. It super fucking sucks. So it's like, that is the only thing I would actually be interested in about anything related to Gex, is here's a conversation with Dana Gould, because Dana Gould was a popular stand-up comedian in the Bay Area, and he got cast, like he was at Cobb's every fucking weekend. He was all over the Bay doing stand-up, before his run on The Simpsons. Like he was fucking all over the place. And so Crystal Dynamics was also in the Bay Area, and so you get the impression that probably what happened is, oh well, Dana Gould was on the come up for sure. He was doing a ton of shows. He was headlining. He was a headline act. He was a great stand-up. Probably still is. And so they probably were like, we're doing this wacky game. Why don't maybe we could get him. Maybe we get him. And they got him, And so the answer to the question about like, what's up with Gex is him like, well, I don't know. There was an article in Variety about like cybers, and I still have it in my garage, but it just doesn't, I don't know. It doesn't feel like the actual answer to the question of how did you get the role of Gex? So it's sort of strange in that way, but Crystal Dynamics did the they leaned on the Bay Area scene a couple of times with like Brian Posehn and and such, but yeah, I don't know. Like the only thing I would be interested in this is a conversation with Dana Gould, and that part of it is fucking really poorly edited and presented in like the worst way possible. So yeah, and for a long time, Dana Gould didn't really talk about Gex. I think like people would approach. I think he maybe would be like, But also, yes, as Pat is saying in the chat, that he doesn't necessarily remember how he got the gig. And so I think that there are opportunities to also talk to other people involved in the production of Gex. Get Steve Grohl on the phone. Like there are people out there still working in video games that worked on believe it or not, working on Gex was not the end of their career. They were allowed to continue to work in the video game business. And so, you know, it would have been nice to have just like a little bit more. Again, like if you're going to do this, do it, right? If you're going to say, hey, we're going to make a Gex trilogy and we're going to put together this thing and tell these stories, like do it. Tell the story. Instead, it's like this interview with Dana Gould that feels very, like, again, it's chopped up incredibly shittily, and just presented as, you know, an afterthought. The other thing I'll say is that Gex does not deserve more than that. The Gex games were bad. They're not good. Like, we're not here to celebrate Gex. Like, people that are out here right now these days, today, celebrating Gex, you're fooling yourself. It's fun, you know. It's fun. It's fun to talk about bad. Look, I get it. It's fun to talk about bad games. It's fun to celebrate bad video games, especially bad video games that are bad in ways that, like, people don't make games that way anymore and all that other stuff, you know. But don't fool yourself. Don't go spend $30. You do not need to buy the Gex trilogy. Also, the Steam description, they go through kind of like, just here's what this Gex trilogy is, and then at the bottom of it says, "That's Gould, Jerry, Gould," and then in parentheses, Dana Gould to be precise. And I don't think you can, like, okay, so you're. No, that's a very Gex-like thing to do, is to just have this like dumb, like out of place reference to another thing. I guess that is a very Gex-like way to, yeah, sure. Maybe that's actually fine. Maybe that's actually like totally appropriate for as bad as Gex actually is. Gex 1 was interesting at the time because, you know, it was on it was on a platform that didn't really have a lot of other games, and, you know, like they ported that stuff around. But by the time we got to Gex 3, and it's just like, here's this kind of fucking third-rate 3D platform, like, you just don't fucking need it, man. Like, the world didn't need it then. Those games were serviceable at best, and it just did not need to happen. But it did. That, and in some ways it's like a fun relic of, like, man, you used to be able to get away with putting out fucking anything, huh? Look at this shit. But I don't think Gex is something to be celebrated. Gex Junior, the prototype, maybe, but I don't think that Gex is something that we should be celebrating. I don't think that Gex is something we should be really revisiting. Or I guess, like, the other thing I would say is, if you're going to make this joke and go like, dude, we're putting out the Gex trilogy, you need to actually go so far overboard on the extras and bonus content that it needs to be fucking ridiculous. You need to be all about that bit. The, like, we are stone-faced, we are deadly serious about making this the definitive fucking document of the Gex trilogy. This is absolutely must be preserved. Like, you know, you kind of need to go all out with it. And instead, it just feels like they farted out this interview. The video quality on the interview looks like shit. Like, it's just, the whole thing is just like, this whole thing is fucking grim. And then apparently it crashes on Switch 2, which is funny. It's the funniest thing about the game is that it crashes on Switch 2. And yeah, you just, no one needs this. No one needs this. And you know, it's out now. I don't know. Speaking of games we maybe did not need, MindsEye came out last week. And has been taking up way more space than it deserves. I figure we've got another 4 or 5 days of people talking about MindsEye, and then, you know, we're never going to hear about it ever again, which is probably about right. MindsEye is a third-person mission-based driving and shooting game. I guess I would say you could liken it to a Grand Theft Auto in the sense that the mission design feels like it fell out of a 20-year-old, 25-year-old GTA game, but with none of the side stuff or none of the anything that makes it interesting. It's broken in a handful of ways. And they issued a hotfix for it because they're like, so there was this round of stories. So MindsEye comes out. They did not send out review copies. They had a weird controversy where one of the CEOs of the studio was out there claiming that like there are forces out there being paid to say negative things about MindsEye, even though like no one's fucking seen it. I don't know. They did some beta tests or something. I don't know. But they, you know, were out there on their Discord server claiming that like people are being paid to say negative things about MindsEye, which is fucking hilarious. And that news story making the rounds was, hilariously enough, one of the first, like most people encountering that story had never heard of MindsEye before. So I don't know if like in their mind they were making like the next biggest, greatest. We've been making the greatest video game ever, and I can't believe these people are not sharing the vision. The only answer is they must be being paid off, you know, or what the fucking fuck is going on over there. But for the game to then come out and just be this fucking absolute fart of a video game, like hilarious. I streamed it last week and asked people in the chat like, hey, so what you know, what do you have you heard of this? And then everyone was like, oh no, like even then it was like, you know, the game had come out and people were like, oh, weird, what is this? I've never heard about it. And you know, so it has this weird lineage where at some point, so this is a studio founded by Leslie Benzies, who, you know, worked on some of Rockstar's biggest games. And they were originally working on a kind of user created content universe called Everywhere. And they were going to have user tools in there, and you go in there and you could make, you know, like your own video games or whatever. They did some beta tests with that, as I understand it, but then MindsEye was announced, and it was like, this is going to be the first thing to come from the Everywhere suite of technology, and we're making a story based thing, and we were, you know, or whatever, and then it kind of, you know, I don't know, the Everywhere stuff kind of faded to the background, and I don't know if that is still a thing or what, but like, basically they made this game MindsEye, and it's a game about a guy who it's a guy who was in the military, and he had some implanted in him that he could use to control drones, and then his drone got zapped by a fucking magical statue. Flash forward 3 years later, he's working for, you know, he gets a job at some massive military tech company that makes electric cars and everything, and cop bots and all this other bullshit. And then he's trying to find out what's up with the shit in his head, and also, you know, going on missions and, you know, whatever. And so the backstory of it is you're trying to figure out like what's up with this thing in his head, and then, but also he's like running security for this big corporation, which means missions where you got to keep a guy safe from gunfire, or missions where you gotta chase a guy but don't get too close. You know, everyone's favorite Grand Theft Auto mission: chase a guy but don't get too close. Except this time you're in a drone. Hooray! At its best, it is this like ultra derivative and old and overly scripted fucking thing. You're just like, this game just feels ancient, and not in like the fun, like, oh man, this feels like a PS2 game in the positive sense. It's like, this feels like a PS2 game in the like worst ways possible. And no part of it, like the voice acting, the performances, like all of that other stuff, it just feels like this one of the thinnest things imaginable. I streamed it for a couple hours and then it said like, hey, you're 23% complete. And it doesn't seem like there's any side stuff to really do. So, I imagine you're going to just kind of trudge through it in, 5 hours or 8 hours, something like that. 10 maybe, I don't know. And then my understanding is that once you beat the game, it unlocks a free roam mode and lets you just drive around the city like you would do in any other open world game. However, there's nothing to do there. It's just, here you go. Now you're loose in the city. But there's nothing to do there. Now, the other component of MindsEye is that they have created a creation suite of tools that you can use to plop down prefab buildings and things in the environment, and you can build missions yourself. And you can upload those and presumably share them with other players. You also encounter these missions made using this stuff over the course of the campaign, where like, because your guy has faulty hardware in his head, he is constantly tripping out. And so you'll just finish a mission and there'll just be a magic portal there in front of you. And you look at it and you're like, oh, there's like a cop car in there. And then you go through it, you play as a completely different guy. And it's like it's like a mission where you were getting a medal at the end of it. And it's like, you got a gold medal because you killed the cops and got to this truck in 3 minutes or less. And like the shooting is all fucking super fucking generic, and the cover system is clumsy, and like the action itself is really lackluster. The game seemingly doesn't run. I've not had any problems with it running it. Streaming it, it's been weird. It's has not ingested well into the streaming software, which has been awkward, but like running it here on PC with a PC that is, well above the minimum spec, it's at least run okay. They were out there saying like, oh, we think we know what the problem is. There's a memory leak and that's causing all these issues. But like they issued a hot fix and, presumably that aspect of it is fixed or will be fixed soon. That's not going to rewrite the story. That's not going to correct the fucking dumb looking fucking main character. Like that's not going to make any of the action feel worth engaging with on any level. Like it's the issues with the technical issues with that are one thing. It's like you're like, okay, yeah, sure, yeah, this stuff I guess, yeah, and it doesn't run as well as maybe it could, but like the idea that you're going to get on the other end of this and be like, now we're talking, here's a quality video game, like dude, no. It is subpar in just about every way. And every aspect of it, when you got everything turned on and turned all the way up, it's like every aspect of it is just like a little grainy and shimmery. And it's just like that kind of like, here's this fucked up Unreal Engine thing that they didn't spend enough time to make it look good. And it's fucked, dude. It's like fucked in a way that you're just like, I can't fucking believe it, man. Normally you just be able to write it off and be like, here's an average to sub-average game. But like, you just look at like everything about it structurally, and the idea that like you're gonna get to the end of this and then here's an empty open world, you're like just so fucking off base. Like all these years later, post GTA, like forget the lineage, like forget that Leslie Benzie's involved, and like forget the that pedigree or something. Just taken on its own merits, without hanging that on its head. Like it doesn't, like there's no way it's going to stand up to fucking actual Grand Theft Auto. Those games have even more ridiculous budgets than I'm sure this did. I'll tell you that I don't know this for sure. I don't know that they ever marketed the Everywhere thing as this. This game feels like an NFT scam. Like this game feels like it was salvaged out of an NFT scam gone wrong. This feels like it was like, oh shit, we were making a fucking blockchain nightmare, and then people decided they didn't want that. And then like, now what, we got to pivot into something. We got to make an actual video game and ship it. And I don't know if they ever came out and said, hey, this like universe of tools we're making is powered by the blockchain. I don't know if they ever said one way or the other that it was or wasn't. That part is kind of irrelevant because the game itself feels like it was. The game feels like it was cobbled out of parts of some other thing, and they're just like, what could we ship this year? Like, let's say we had to ship a game in early summer this year. Let's say that we were going to be out of money and we had to get this game out the door so that there's some money coming in, because holy shit, we wasted the last 5 years making something that no one wants, and it actually doesn't work as well as we thought it would. What do you think we could do? What do you think we could get away with? And it feels like they sat down with their own tools and fucking cranked out a shitty fucking GTA style game. Getting all of the things wrong about like the things that, you know, make people actually like Grand Theft Auto, and shipped it. And it was broken when they shipped it. And on top of that, it did not even ship smoothly or cleanly or well. It's a really bizarre case for a lot of those reasons, and it's not a good. It is not a quality product, just straight up. And I think it's like funny, you know, when you layer on the kind of last minute conspiracy theory of like they're out there trying to get. I'm not going to say who, but you could figure it out, brother. Like it's fucking an extra layer of like, dude, like, what are you trying to cope? Like, how you're like, just face it. This thing is bad. Like, you probably made the best decisions you could at the time as the time you were making it, but like you had to pivot and do this and that. Like, you know, shit happens, right? I don't think that this is probably not a game that anyone sat down and said, this is the thing we came here to make. You know? But at some point, you know, you got to fucking get something. You got to get something out of it. But some of the statements they've given, you know, kind of post-release about the hot, like, I mean, it's the stuff that, you know, you kind of have to say because you can't just come out and say, like, oh, by the way, this game is fucking terrible. Instead, it's like, a heartfelt thank you to all our day one players. We know the launch of MindsEye hasn't been without its challenges for some of you. Yeah, I mean, like the strife of, I downloaded MindsEye and it didn't. Right now, our top priority is game performance. We understand that the requirements are high and have limited the experience for many of you, and for this, we sincerely apologize. Improving performance across all devices is our immediate focus. A patch that begins our commitment to address this is scheduled for the end of this week on PC, which will roll out to consoles as soon as possible. The hotfix will include CPU and GPU performance improvements, reduced difficulty for the CPR minigame, disable or modify depth of field, missing controls for minigame, you know, just like relatively like minor, you know, like stuff that you just look at and go like, that's not, none of that makes the game good. It's really, I don't know, silly, I guess. It's just like I said, I don't think that they, without like completely revamping what this game is, I don't think that there's a way that they will ever get this to a point where it's like a recommendable thing. You know, like this thing could run at fucking locked 60 on every platform and be absolutely rock solid from a technical perspective. It's just not fun to play. The mission design is bad. The dialogue that supports that mission design is bad. The action is underwhelming at every turn. It's not like you're going to suddenly patch an entirely different and better video game into this. You know? So, I don't know. On PlayStation, players have been getting refunds, which is only notable because Sony hates to give refunds for anything ever. And Video Games Chronicle has kind of compiled some of that stuff together. Also, the other thing is they didn't send it out for review, which, like, yeah, I wouldn't either, I guess. Well, I don't know, you know, there's something to be said for taking it on the chin if you know you've got something that doesn't, you know, that like, you're okay, well, this is what it is. And, they were issuing day one patches and trying to, obviously it shipped in a bad state. And so, there's that aspect to it. But I think the only thing that increased interest in this game was them getting out there and claiming there was conspiracy and then not sending out review copies, because you have put that paints a gigantic target on the game where people go, oh, I want to know what this thing is. Oh, we should see what this thing is. Oh, we should make sure we pick up a copy of this and look at it immediately, because clearly they're trying to, like, that is the message sent to reviewers. And, that was something that I always, what was a big red flag for me was like, okay, if we're not getting a review copy of something, it's because they're not confident in it, or they're trying to we need to get our hands on this as soon as possible, because it almost feels like they're trying to deceive the public and pull an end around it and not have any coverage out there of it. Like, we should see what's up here. And sometimes you get a game that wasn't sent out and you're like, this game's actually fine. It's actually, like, it's pretty good. Maybe it's not that amazing, but you're like, okay, hey, this thing. More often than not, though, what you're getting is something that is like broken and is waiting for a patch, or the patch didn't make it out by launch, or like all of that other stuff. Pat says Doom 2016 ruled and they didn't let anyone see it. Yes, I guess that. So if my timeline lines up on that, the Doom 2016 was the first game they put out after Bethesda decided they weren't going to send review codes out to anyone anymore. And they contacted, so they wanted to send it out to us. They contacted, so they said, like, oh, we're not giving out review copies of games anymore. And then sent me an email that said, like, hey, we want to send you a copy of Doom early because we know that you're a judge for the Game Awards. And we want to make sure that it gets, that you have time to judge it and time to do all this stuff. And I was like, and they said, you're not to use it for review purposes. I was just like, oh, okay. No. I just said no. I said, no, I don't want it. And then they went to my boss, and my boss, he's refusing the code. He's doing it. And it's like, yeah, they tried to start a big fight about it. And then I think that ended with, like, someone in Bethesda's PR department claiming that I was anti-consumer on Twitter, which was real good, and real fucking dumb. Yeah, it was because I said, like, hey, here's what's going on. The company that says that they're not going to send out review codes anymore still wants to try to win awards. And fuck that. I'm pretty sure that was Doom. There was a game that I'm pretty sure it must have, Doom 2016 would have lined up, unless it was the game that came out after that, later that year or something, because no, okay, yeah. So that was May of that year. So that would be early to send things out for, like, awards consideration. So maybe that was something that they put out later that year. So maybe Doom was the game that they decided not to send out, and then there was a second game that they were like, hey, we want to send this to you for awards consideration. And so, yeah, it probably wasn't Doom then, because if that was May, games getting sent out for, yeah, was it Dishonored 2? When did Dishonored 2 come out? Yeah, so that was November 2016. So that probably was Dishonored 2 then. And I just said no. I'm not accepting a code for awards consideration. Like, if you send it out for review, like, don't, like, I don't want it. And they were not fucking happy about that. It was very funny. Anyway, MindsEye is it's silly, and then just this quote that they gave, they issued a statement about the hot fix. Our teams have worked tirelessly throughout the night to solve many of these issues, and we have now identified that the vast majority of crashes are caused by a memory leak. This impacted roughly 1 in 10 of our players. Well, you know, if only one person experienced it, then of the 10 players you have, then, you know, that's not so bad. Working tirelessly throughout the night is not a thing you say about your game anymore, by the way. Like, that's not, you don't just leave that part out. Leave the, we're working 24 hours a day. We're crunching after the fact to patch this piece of shit game. Like, just don't, you don't need to say that. You just don't need to say it. Yeah, so I don't know, man. Like, where does this game get to? I don't know. Like, it doesn't get anywhere. Like, this game will fade into the background and it will become a funny joke the way, I don't know, The Quiet Man was or something. You know, like, it's just not, like, no one's gonna stick around and go like, oh, after all these patches, it sure is great now. And look at this mission I made. You can race or shoot and race. I think it's done, man. Wrap it up. Like, fix your technical bugs, yeah, but it's not, you know, you're not gonna, this is not something that's going to, like, there's no corner to be turned here, I think. So you know, and I feel bad about that. Like, it's, you know, I think people get very gleeful when they talk about bad video games and all of that other stuff. And I think that's, you know, it happens sometimes, right? But none of this feels good. None of this is like, you know, no one's going like, I wanted that. I mean, maybe someone is, you know, I don't know. Maybe there's someone with a grudge out there that is like, I knew that guy couldn't do it on his own, or, you know, with his whatever. But like, I don't fucking know any of these people. I don't give a shit. None of that matters. The game is bad. Like, straight at that end of story. Like, it's fun to talk about, hey man, this guy from the developer was crazy, and but some people left the studio the week before it came out, and you're like, okay, yeah, whatever. Game's not good. We shouldn't even be talking about it for more than a couple more days here. Like, it's already, you know, already done. There's not much more to say about it unless you want to go finish it. So I have not played much more of it since that stream, because people were like, oh man, you should stream the rest of this game. You need to do it. I don't know that I want to, man. It just doesn't feel good. I'm not here to fucking like dance on this fucking thing's grave. I don't give enough of a shit about it to do that. I just don't, you know, it's just like none of that feels fucking great. So I don't know, but I have been tempted by that conceptually to be like, you know, and maybe I will finish it on my own time out of some fucking weird sickness. But it's just like, ultimately, it's just kind of not worth, like, it is barely worth the level of discussion it's got so far. And the only reason it's gotten that is because of the circumstances around its release and some of that weirdness and whatever. This is a game that you just come out and you just go like, look at this fucking thing. Jesus Christ. Anyway, 9 more games came out the next day. Who cares? We're moving on. You shouldn't buy MindsEye. You don't need to. If you have heard of MindsEye, maybe don't buy it. If you haven't heard of MindsEye, well, then keep doing your thing. Let's take one more break and we'll come back and we will talk about Spine, which is a video game. We won't just talk about My Spine. I don't have much to say about My Spine, but we'll come back. We'll talk about Spine. It's a video game. When was the last time you really spent some time going through your finances and trying to figure out, you know, hey, here's where your money is going and here's how much is coming in and all that other? It can be daunting, you know, trying to figure out like, okay, well, I got to get this credit card. And, you know, certain subscriptions and payments and things like that can just fall through the cracks. And before you know it, you've blown $150 on some subscription service you don't even want anymore. And you're like, oh man, what am I going to do about this? Rocket Money! Rocket Money is here to help you. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so that you can grow your savings. The app will combine all of your subscriptions into one place so you can see exactly where your money is going. It'll point out like, hey, this is a subscription. Are you using this, or do you maybe want to cancel this? It'll, also find opportunities for savings. Like, hey, you're paying this monthly. We happen to know that this, audio book seller or whoever has an annual subscription as well. Maybe if you are using this, you should probably switch to that because it will save you some money. And sometimes they will be able to let you know, hey, you're paying this much for, say, your cell phone. We think that is a high price, and you can send them out to negotiate on your behalf. And in some cases, they'll go out and they'll come back and save you hundreds of dollars. I saved a couple $100 on a satellite radio subscription that is way too much money. Way too much money they want for that stuff. Rocket Money said, hey, this is crazy. I said, Rocket Money, you are right. What can you do me for about it? I gave them about a week and they went out and did it. It was awesome. They'll cancel your subscription so you don't have to spend a bunch of time on the phone going through phone trees and people trying to retention this and, we could offer you this amazing offer if you stick with us. We really would hate to lose your business for this thing that you don't use. Like, oh, man. You don't have time to deal with that. Let Rocket Money deal with that. They also have, in the app, there's a goals feature that can automatically save some money for you, set it aside. So, if you're looking to help pay off bills or put money away for a house or just build some savings, Rocket Money makes it easy. They'll alert you if some bills go up in price or if they find some unusual spending activity. They'll organize things into categories so you can get a sense of just like, dude, we are eating out too much. Simple stuff like that. That can, if you're not happy with that, make some adjustments in your life. I don't know. Or don't. Just look at it and go, ha, we eat out a lot. That's badass. Whatever you're into. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when they use all of the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Download the Rocket Money app and enter the show name, The Jeff Gerstmann Show, in the survey so they know that I sent you. Don't wait. Download the Rocket Money app today and tell them you heard about it from this show. Yeah. Spine is unfortunately not a game entirely based around that part of Dr. Detroit where he says he makes adjustments to the human spine, but that would be good. I played Spine at Summer Game Fest. That is a game upcoming here. I don't actually have the date in front of me. Let me look at that real quick here. It is a third-person action shootery kind of thing, a little bit of a Batman style. I'll put it to you this way. I sat down to take a look at Spine, which is coming from a developer named Neki. I think they are primarily they've primarily done mobile stuff. But this is I sat down, and one of the first things the person giving me the demo said to me was, yeah, we've been inspired by games such as Wet and Oni. And I just started nodding and said, okay, yeah, all right, yeah. Show me this. Show me this. If you're going to sit here and you're going to tell me that God damn it, man, if you're going to, and then he goes like, I'm like Blood Rain. And I'm like, okay, yeah. You're going to sit here and you're going to tell me about Wet. You're going to tell me, the one person on this entire, like a 5-block radius or however big the summer game, like I am pretty much the only person here who, when you say Wet, I'm going like, yeah, no, yeah. Yeah, I play. Yes, I played Wet. Yes, of course I played Wet. Of course I think about Wet. I don't think Wet's a great game, but like, okay, yes, you learned things from Wet. There were things to be learned from Wet. Let's talk about it. I was very excited. It is kind of a, they call it free flow. I have their fact sheet up now, and it is like capital letter, free flow gun fu combat. And the demo was very short and just focused on like showing that combat off, and I thought it worked pretty well. But it is a game where you are kind of doing the Batman combat thing of taking on a bunch of enemies around you and kind of sliding over, getting hits in here, hits in there. Except sometimes you're also doing it with guns, so you're kind of like pop, working your way around in a circle of this crowd. It had a very cool visual style to it, some nice animation, and just like, it had a flow to it, and I think that's what those games need. It was something that you could look at it and go like, this is clearly not a final product, but like there are bones to this that you look at and go like, yeah, this seems like something that you could build into something pretty cool. They did mention Stranglehold as well, but like, Stranglehold is a little more Max Payne-like in its execution, whereas Wet was a little less of that. And but yes, they did name drop a handful of B games, really. And you look at it and go like, yeah, no, cool. Like you're making a game that feels like very much in line with some of that stuff. There's also there's like an element of like she's a street artist, or so she's got a spray paint can that you can kind of spin in a circle and spray, and if you're kind of getting crowded, you can spray the spray paint to back them all off a little bit, give yourself a little bit more space. But it's very much like, oh, I went over and punched this guy. He dropped his shotgun. I picked it up. I rolled over here. I fucking put that shotgun under that guy's face, pulled the trigger, did this, rolled over here. And, like there is a flow to that combat that feels really nice, and it looked pretty good overall. I don't really have a ton to say about it past that because, it is something that they are kind of still in the works on. I was looking to see if it's out next year. That's what they're saying. PC, PS5, Xbox, and Switch 2. They also had a boss fight in there against a woman who kept dropping spider mines. So you're rolling around trying to dodge her shots, but also these spider mines are crawling in your direction, so you kind of have to keep moving from that too. That whole area took place it was like a room full of pillars where they were very much like, I mean, he stopped to point out like, hey, did you see the Matrix? This is not that exact scene, but when these pillars fall apart as you're shooting them, we also saw the Matrix, and yeah, so it was pretty neat for what it was. Like, I'm curious to see how it shapes up. And as an alpha or something that they were showing here, like, it seemed like it could be kind of cool. So, Spine, I would say, keep an eye out for it, and we'll see if it comes together, because it was a neat little demo. With all that out of the way, let's move on to the news. The PlayStation 6 still feels like a very wrong thing to say out loud, but here we are. Sony held a kind of a business meeting, kind of analyst focused, earnings type of thing. And Hideaki Nishino, the CEO of Sony Interactive Entertainment, was there to answer a handful of questions and, kind of where their head is at as far as like the future of video games and all of that. And while he did not, I don't believe he said the words PlayStation 6 out loud, he did confirm, this is according to, there's been a couple of wrap-ups of this, videogameschronicle.com has a wrap-up of it, kind of saying that, local execution of video games is something that players value, meaning not the cloud, kind of answering like, is the future of this cloud streaming? Is there another PlayStation? Kind of that kind of future of games type of question. Yeah, I mean, it seems like the Sony point of view is that cloud streaming is a viable option for players, but that local execution of games is where it's at. And so with that in mind, that they are, thinking about what the next generation of hardware may look like. That's not that's not news, right? The the next console is in development as soon as as soon as one ships, right? They're like, okay, well, let's start thinking about this. We got a clock ticking now. We've got 7 to 10 years. Let's figure out where things are going and what do we want to do and how is this, and and so, of course, that's going to be a thing. He had some things to say about cloud streaming stuff that I think is interesting as well from a business angle and like how that stuff works. Cloud streaming is progressing well from a technical standpoint, as we have demonstrated with our offerings, but end-to-end network stability is not in our control, which is a great point. Sony can only do so much. The internet is the internet. He goes on. And the higher cost per play time compared to the traditional console model remains a challenge. Console gaming is increasingly providing an additional option for players to access content, cloud gaming is increasingly providing an additional option for players to access content, but our belief is that the majority of players continue to want to experience gaming through local execution without dependency on network conditions. And PS5 and PS5 Pro have validated this thesis, I believe. But also, that they are looking at the console business or their business specifically as continuing to evolve, right? And, obviously they have been continuing to put games on PC, and that stuff is doing very well. For like Stellar Blade, had a super high concurrence on launch day on Steam. So, it seems like a lot of people were waiting for that game to play on PC. And also, we'll get into kind of some of their handheld stuff here in a little bit, but that's kind of another facet of this, is that the entire market is changing, and Sony is looking to kind of have this multi-device or multi-platform strategy, I suppose. Not just, hey, we're putting it on PC. I mean that more in the sense of like, you can play PlayStation games on a PS5. You might be able to play them on a handheld. You might be able to play them in the cloud and like multiple places to play those games, which is basically what the Xbox strategy has openly been for a little bit now. The handheld part of it, I think, is still largely coming into focus, but that is sort of where a lot of this stuff is heading. And so, that's where they're kind of seeing stuff, but also they are obviously seeing ongoing usage of the PlayStation 4 and how that has been. And to that end, Lynn Azar, who's the Senior Vice President of Finance and Corporate Development, was also on this call and talked a little bit about that. Saying, PlayStation 5 represents our most engaged players with the highest spend per player versus previous generations. Our PS4 players as well are still active and spending as well. So by providing players with increasing options of how to access the platform, we're able to better target the different play patterns and monetization profiles of different customer segments. And as we continue to drive a multi-generational ecosystem into the future, we'll provide new ways for players to access the platform and experience our content and services. So I think that's, when we think about, hey, this stuff might venture into a handheld domain, that's the sort of thing that can extend a generation even further. Like maybe we get a PlayStation 6, right? But maybe this handheld is really a PlayStation 5 and a light version of a PlayStation 5 at that. And so, that could be a way that like you are technically extending the PS5 generation for another 5 or 10 years or something, if they decide to go that route. To that end, Eurogamers got a breakdown. The Digital Foundry is kind of a breakdown of what they are saying are like pretty reliably sourced leaks of specs for a portable PlayStation. I guess the original source on these is someone named Kepler L2 on Twitter, who has a pretty good track record from the sounds of things. But this kind of just gets bogged down in numbers, so I'm not going to necessarily like walk you through all of this stuff because some of it is out of my depth. But they're talking about an APU with 16 UDNA compute units and 32 ROPS. And the UDNA architecture is something that is new here, and that may be generationally ahead of the RDNA platform that AMD has traditionally used. The point here that the Digital Foundry kind of pulls out of this stuff is overall system performance and comparison points to things like other handheld devices that we've seen, using some of these AMD parts, the Steam Deck, and like the ROG Ally and your MSI Claws, or whatever else is out there. But like these different handhelds, most of them are using these similar AMD parts. But there are two improvements here. So that stuff is all kind of, I don't want to say locked in or whatever, or not improving fast enough or something, but we are seeing kind of a new generation of the AMD, that APU that is showing up in some of these newer units. And we've seen Valve say, hey, we're gonna wait until there's like a meaningful upgrade here, before we go out again and actually make a Steam Deck 2 or whatever they're gonna do. The reasoning that all this stuff has fallen in a relatively similar performance profile, according to Digital Foundry, is memory bandwidth, and that memory bandwidth has been, pretty, kind of a bottleneck on some of this stuff, and that Sony is looking to address that specifically with a couple of upgrades with faster LPDDR5X memory, and an additional memory cache on the processor itself. They're claiming that this delivers a third of the existing PlayStation 5 memory bandwidth, with some additional differences due to architectural improvements. Now, that's a very long-winded way of saying, Sony seems to be finding that there is an issue here with memory bandwidth, and that all of these other devices that have hit the market so far have kind of been saddled with this similar issue, and so that their parts are looking to specifically address that in ways that may give it a performance advantage over at least the stuff that's currently on the shelves. Digital Foundry goes on to kind of speculate that maybe this is the sort of thing that Valve is also waiting for before they iterate on the Steam Deck, that a move to this UDNA architecture may be something that they are waiting for. So we'll kind of see how all of that stuff goes. But it's, at a point when we don't really have a ton of details about what PlayStation's handheld plans are, it is interesting to see, again, this is all leaks and unconfirmed and whatever else. So, keep all of that in mind. And so all we can really do is kind of take the track record of the leaker and the idea that Digital Foundry then went on and devoted quite a bit of space, quite a number of words to it, which if they thought that was fake, I don't think that they would be writing this as authoritatively as they did, which says to me that maybe they also have seen something similar, but are not willing to go out there and say, yes. But we'll see. So yeah, that's interesting. And again, as PlayStation starts to talk about its future and where it's going, that is where it's going. We'll presumably see a follow-up to the PlayStation 5 in a PlayStation 6 like shell, whatever that ends up looking like. And then we will see some kind of handheld thing that will probably not be as powerful as a PlayStation 5, but they will use some trickery to make it more powerful than it would be otherwise if they had just used the kind of off-the-shelf parts, and they will try to get the most out of it that they can. And this leaves them with a multi-device and almost multi-generational strategy that ends up being not entirely unlike where the Xbox has been with the Series S and the Series X. And we'll see, where Microsoft gets to with their next thing, right? Because presumably they will eventually get to another piece of Xbox hardware, right? Someone was saying that there was some new video out there today with not a lot of, yeah. So they announced that AMD is powering We've established a strategic multi-year agreement with AMD to co-engineer silicon across a portfolio of devices, including our next-generation Xbox consoles. Together, we're delivering deeper visual quality, immersive gameplay, and AI-powered experiences grounded in a platform designed for players, not tied to a single store or device, and fully compatible with your existing Xbox library. Okay, this is a minute-long video. I'm just going to push play on it so we can hear what Sarah Bond has to say. Because the description that they have written here reads to me like a confirmation that the next generation Xbox will also not be tied to a single store or device, which is, of course, the right answer, but they have not really confirmed that one way or the other. So let's listen to this together. Oh, yeah.
At Xbox, our vision is for you to play the games you want with the people you want, anywhere you want. That's why we're investing in our next generation hardware lineup across console, handheld, PC, cloud, and accessories. I am thrilled to share we've established a strategic multi-year partnership with AMD to co-engineer silicon across a portfolio of devices, including our next generation Xbox consoles, in your living room and in your hands. Together with AMD, we are advancing the state of art in gaming silicon to deliver the next generation of graphics innovation to unlock a deeper level of visual quality and immersive gameplay and player experiences enhanced with the power of AI, all while maintaining compatibility with your existing library of Xbox games. This is all about building you a gaming platform that's always with you, so you can play the games you want across devices anywhere you want, delivering you an Xbox experience not locked to a single store or tied to one device. That's why we're working closely with the Windows team to ensure that Windows is the #1 platform for gaming. The next generation of Xbox is coming to life, and this is just the beginning. We can't wait to show you what's next.
It's a weird video. So, you know, enhanced with the power of AI. Like, of course they're going to say that because the company is so far up fucking AI's fucking there's up Sam Altman's fucking, or vice versa, right? I mean, like, Microsoft owns the fucking OpenAI IP or something at this point because of the way the partnership went, right? Like, they hold way more cards in that relationship than OpenAI seems to. Either way. I think the actual thing there is, hey, it's not going to be locked down to one store. It's not going to be locked down to one device. And they're saying it will be compatible with your existing Xbox games. Now, if we take those promises at face value and not with asterisks, that means that they're going to bring full backwards compatibility of Xbox games to Windows, right? Which is something they should have done 10 years ago. But it's something that they should still do. And also, we are taking that to mean that all of these devices will be open, meaning even the Xbox console would be something you could install Steam on. Which, again, you know, we've been talking about that for months now, as like, that is probably what they should be doing. That is the position they should be leveraging. They control Windows. It is a strength that they have that no one else does. If they can get Windows in the right place to make all of that work. And this video is actually kind of nice in a weird way, because it is also an acknowledgement that we are working with the Windows team to make Windows the best place that, like, they're like kind of low-key acknowledging that, like, this work is not done yet. We have a lot to do. But this is the right direction for them, for sure. And this is a very interesting direction for them because it opens them up to this world of partner devices, like working with Asus on the Ally Xbox X and the other one that is less powerful. Those are supposedly coming out October-ish. if rumors are to be believed. But this is a cool. I don't know. I like that. Again, as someone who likes the kind of handheld PC space, and feels that like Xbox needs a direction that they can really kind of like grab onto and like a segment that they can consider their own. The subscription stuff with Game Pass kind of was theirs for a while, but obviously everyone, or everyone, I mean, Sony has something similar now. Sony's probably not going to make Windows powered devices, right? They're probably not going to do that anytime soon. And so the idea that, I mean, let's Microsoft got their ass kicked. They have had their ass handed to them for a couple of generations now. Like, and I think a lot of those wounds were self-inflicted. The era of Don Matrick cast a very long shadow over their business and all of that sort of stuff. Like, shit happens, man. So, with the position that they've been in since the launch of the Xbox One, I think that this is a really great pivot for them. I think this is a really smart move for them that they should have kind of done a while ago, in at least in bits and pieces, if not fully. That like this is the right plan for them moving forward. Everything about this I look at and go like, yeah, this makes a ton of sense. With the exception of the minute you're selling people a PC, and they're most of the way down this road too, right? It's the whole Xbox Live Gold thing. Is that Xbox Live Gold always made them a ton of money. But I suppose they've transitioned most of those players into Game Pass, or that's the goal, right? Is like, well, stop paying for online multiplayer, start paying for subscription access to these games, and they'll get as many people as they can, because the old way is dying. And it is mostly dead. But they just do still technically sell some kind of Xbox Live Gold, thing for people who want online multiplayer but don't want Game Pass. There is still some weird version of that off to the side. But like they've been on that transitionary road for a really long time. And so starting to see them make the big moments, hey, here's hardware. It's like these smaller moments of like, oh, we're reworking Game Pass to encompass this. Xbox Live Gold is now this, and we're changing this over here. Like the little bits and pieces have all felt like these little tiny steps down this road. And so the handheld, combined with the news that their own handheld is like off the table, that like it sounds like that thing went from like, oh, we're putting that on hold to work with Asus on their device and also get Windows in shape. It sounds like that maybe now they are instead on in the mindset of like, oh, we're just not going to make our own thing right now. Which I think is fine. They should focus on console hardware and this kind of handheld thing. Like, they don't need to. Microsoft has made good console hardware, and that's about it. So it's been a pretty good controller for a good long time now. The boxes have been fine. Well, okay. The original Xbox One was not fine. But the Xbox One X was all right. The Xbox Series X is a hell of a console. It's fine. I like the way it looks, but also, it is just about as powerful as a PS5. Like it doesn't matter, right? And the Xbox controller is solid. But beyond that, Microsoft hardware has not been awesome. No one's going like, the good old days of Surface tablets. And, some people like the Zune, but let's not, hey, the IntelliMouse Explorer was a game-changing mouse. The Sidewinder controllers there were great PC controllers in a pre-USB era. But like Microsoft is not largely known for hardware outside of the Xbox, and so when they're saying, oh, we're going to make our own handheld, we're going to do this, like that there's nothing exciting about that to me. Them partnering with someone else to make it is every bit is good enough, especially in an era where they're going to theoretically be moving closer and closer to Windows for all of this stuff. They don't need to do it at this point in time. Maybe they will someday have their own hardware a reference handheld that's theirs, and then other people will continue to make them. But at the end of the day, if they're just making Windows handhelds and everything's an Xbox, what's the fucking point, right? So I feel like this is an Xbox division that is finally fucking read every last bit of the writing on the wall about their business and where it's headed and where everything else is headed, and looked at what their actual strengths are as an organization and said, dude, we can fucking nail this shit. Like this is a few degrees off of where we've been, and it's going to change our business in pretty radical ways. But like, we're most of the way there anyway, and market forces, meaning the competition from Sony or whatever, or the popularity of the PC in general, these market forces are shifting in a way that are driving our old way of thinking out either way. So let's get ahead of it and make something cool. And they're not as quite ahead of it as maybe they could have been if they had seen this a number of years earlier and gotten Windows in shape 5 years ago instead of working on it right now. But this is still the right answer for them. And I do think it's the right answer for players at large. I think that like they're like, everyone talks about the PC and the problems of the PC of like, oh, fucking, I don't want to fucking dick around with this thing. I want to turn on a machine and fucking hit a button and have it go. And I don't want to buy parts. I don't want to have to replace shit. I don't know what Windows, I don't know how to use any of this stuff. And I'm never going to learn it. There are a lot of people that are in that boat, and that's why consoles continue to exist, right? If, and it is still a big if they can start making devices that are the best of both worlds, if it's like, hey, no, this gives you the openness of a PC, if you really feel like you want to get in there and tinker, you could do it. But we still have a console-like experience for you that will just fucking work. If you don't want to dick around with that and you just want to launch it and load up the Xbox store and buy games that way and play on Game Pass and do that stuff, yes, we have that for you. If you are someone who is a little more advanced and you want to install Steam on this motherfucker, install Steam on this motherfucker. We don't care. That is a fucking great way for, again, I think for consumers, that is a cool fucking device. That I think solves some of the problems that we've been talking about, right? You know, of like, you know, again, there are some people that are never going to buy a PC. They don't want to dick around with it. They don't fucking. And again, these are very big ifs, right? I think this is something that it could be fucked up in 9 different ways, right? If Windows isn't where it needs to be, if we're not getting as much performance out of this because we couldn't optimize Windows the right way. We couldn't strip it down far enough. Windows 12 is going to get us there, but right now we're saddled with this or what, you know, like there's a billion different things that could happen between here and there. Or like, this thing is unstable. It took a bad patch in that, but you know, consoles take bad firmware and the games crash now on consoles too. You know, MindsEye memory leak didn't just affect the PC version of the game. So it's not like video games are the most stable they've ever been. And that's just our fucking reality now, which is sad. But consoles aren't consoles the way they used to be either. So I look at this as a tremendous opportunity for Microsoft to really take over in a segment that that could revitalize their entire business and revitalize the idea of an Xbox. You know, if they get all this right. They might not get it all right. It might, you know, they might completely flounder and fuck it all up and whatever. And of course, like Valve is still out there doing like amazing work in Linux. And watching that has been like inspiring. Like the stuff that they're doing is fucking killer, dude. It's so awesome to look at where SteamOS has gotten to, because they've just had the right motivation, and then just like the interest and the tech has gotten to a certain point, and just everything they've done with Proton to make that stuff work as well as it does just feels like fucking magic. And the Steam Deck is almost there as a consumer friendly device. You know, it's again, you know, you're going to run into some issues here and there depending on the game. And, you know, Valve has had its, you know, refund policy in place, and that refund policy helps them get away with this stuff, right? Because there's so many games on Steam and not all of them are going to run perfectly on this thing, but they're like, hey, fuck it, dude, refund it. We're cool. We get it. We can't verify all these games. And, you know, Microsoft is going to have to come up with something similar, you know, if it's really going to do backwards compatibility on Windows to the degree that they should. It needs to be much more than the, you know, they were just at their thing a couple weeks ago saying, oh, Xbox Play Anywhere now encompasses over 1,000 games. That's awesome. It's not enough. It needs to be all of them. You need to be emulating the Xbox Series X and Xbox One. Emulating is a weird, I mean, no, like, but you need to be able to play your entire Xbox Series X library on a Windows machine. You need to be able to play the vast majority, like your entire Xbox One library on Windows. When we get back to 360, and I think that that's something that, you know, you end up with the same limitations that they have today, right? Of like, oh, it's not gonna, you're not gonna be able to just plop a disc in and play 360 games on a PC. But if you own these games and you have this and that, and, you know, like these games that we did the work for backwards compatibility, you'll be able to play original Xbox games. You'll be able to play original 360 games. But again, those are business restraints, right? You know, Chad is you cannot just go get the guy that made Xenia and the people that contribute to Xenia and XMU and say, go nuts, dude. Like, because there are too many business constraints in the way to sell those games again or do that. Like, at some point, it's just not worth it. And if this thing's just running Windows, fuck it, man. Install that shit yourself. Who cares? Right? If you know about that stuff, just do it. There's going to be lunatics out there playing Switch games on an Xbox. There probably already are, right? I mean, you know, probably Xbox Series X in dev mode. Did anyone port that over? I don't know. I don't follow that stuff. But if they pull this off, that sounds very much like a device that I would be excited to own and use. And we just have to kind of see if they do it, right? But this video, this thing they just put out about, you know, this partnership with AMD and the 2 or 3 sentences in there about Windows and about your Xbox library, like, this is the sort of stuff that you look at and go, like, if they actually mean that, if they're actually going to do this, this is I am convinced that this is the rightest move they could be making. Again, to the point that they probably should have made it a while ago. But Windows is Windows, and Windows is a beast. And will they be able to actually pull it off? Right? This is the struggle. So, and will they be able to optimize Windows in such a way that it will be properly optimized for a variety of gaming-focused devices? It's not that they're just making one game machine and have to optimize Windows for that one game machine. It's that they are going to have a class of devices from an unknowable number of partners, and also make their own console, and, you know, they'll be able to optimize for that and whatever. But, like, that, none of that is easy. In fact, that all sounds very hard. But again, I think if they pull this off, I like, that's, and it's not you know, it's not something as dumb and as simple as, like, if they pull that off, they're really going to stick it to Sony. Like, it's just like, it's a different business now. It's not about, like, oh, this is going to lead to console sales and they're going to kill the PlayStation. It's none of that. You know, Sony's over here going, like, here's our handheld and here's this, and, you know, they're taking what is becoming like a, you know, a very Japanese approach, right? Like, they're probably going to follow in the Nintendo footsteps of trying to still have a closed system, with the exception of selling their games on PC at some point down the line. Which, by the way, means that those games all run on, quote, an Xbox, which is like a fun little bonus. But it's, you know, the closed system of PlayStation, like, if that's the route that they stick on, like, I think that puts them in a precarious spot to some extent. Maybe not worldwide, because, you know, worldwide we'll see, but, like, if you're making a choice, right? And your choice is buy a PlayStation and it's got all these games and you get their first party games on day one, and you're playing inside of the closed PlayStation environment, or get a Windows machine with an Xbox logo on it, whether it's a handheld or a console or a God's honest computer, and you can play all of those games, but you'll just have to wait 6 months to play the first party Sony stuff. And you have access to multiple storefronts, and you have, you know, like all of this other stuff. I would choose the open platform every single time, you know. And that's just me. Some people, you know, are just like they're in the PlayStation ecosystem for life, and that's them. And you know, like that's a valid, will, I'm sure, continue to be a valid approach. But like, I don't know, man. That sounds like a tough sell on the PlayStation side of things. But whatever. We're like 9 theoreticals deep at this point. Let's stop on that talk for now, other than to say I hope that they nail that, because that sounds like a device I would like to own. If they can do what they're if they actually pull it off with Windows, I would love to own a really great Windows handheld that played everything and still had the openness of me being able to install all my shit. It's the thing I love about the Steam Deck, is that I can tinker with it and fiddle with it and install different stuff. But the Steam Deck does have its limitations of, like, a handful of games don't play due to anti-cheat, and you know that's a real thing. That's an issue. You know, like there's those sorts of things that, you know, Valve will. It's unlikely that they'll ever be able to truly solve some of that stuff. But yeah, I'm on board with that. I think that that's a really exciting way for them to go. And we'll see. We'll see where it all ends up. So Marathon got officially delayed today, but this was already... It actually got officially delayed, I think, as a part of that business call that they had. Because in that call, they talked a little bit about Marathon, and they were like, yeah, no, Marathon, we're still into it. It's still happening. We're still, you know, but then they said it's going to be out this fiscal year. That's all that they would commit to as a part of that earnings call, was like, it's going to be out this fiscal, which means by March 2026, which for a game that already had an announced release date in September means that they just announced a delay for it, you know, last week. That was Friday, I think, that all happened. So today Bungie confirmed it, but this was, again, this stuff was in that call already. But yes, there is a, what do we got here from Bungie here? Thank you for not only your passionate feedback around the Marathon reveal and alpha playtest, but also for your patience while we took the time to listen closely and chart our next steps. Through every comment and real-time conversation on social media and Discord, your voice has been strong and clear. We've taken this to heart. We know we need more time to craft Marathon into the game that truly reflects your passion. After much discussion within our dev team, we've made the decision to delay the September 23rd release. Now remember, like, they were canceling marketing spends and you know, there was like every sign after that art stuff was that, hey, this game is not going to make that September date. It's not a shock. If you are shocked by this, then you probably have not been paying any real attention to this stuff, because every indicator was that this, like, post that alpha and the art leak, there was no way this thing was coming out in September. Let's see here. The alpha test created an opportunity for us to calibrate and focus the game on what makes it uniquely compelling: survival under pressure, mystery and lore around every corner, raid-like endgame challenges, and Bungie's genre-defining FPS combat. We're using this time to empower the team to create the intense, high-stakes experience that a title like Marathon is built around. That means deepening the relationship between the developers and the game's most important voices, our players. They're going to continue closed testing. They do have a list of some focus areas here. Some of our immediate focus areas will be upping the survival game, meaning more challenges and engaging AI encounters, more rewarding runs with new types of loot and dynamic events, making combat more tense and strategic. 2, doubling down on the Marathon universe, increased visual fidelity, more narrative and environmental storytelling to discover and interact with, a darker tone that delivers on the themes of the original trilogy. That's such a weirdly, specific, I don't know, all right. And 3, adding more social experiences, a better player experience for solo and duos, and prox chat so social stories can come to life. You'll hear from us again later this fall when we can share the progress we've made alongside the game's new release date. So again, they just had that earnings call, meaning where they said it would be out this fiscal year. So I don't know that this is a delay past that date. So I assume they'll still be out by March. Because it would be weird to go out there and say this game's coming out this fiscal year and then a couple of days later be like, oh yeah, this more feels like it is the confirmation of that initial kind of soft announcement of the delay. Okay, so yeah, a better player experience for solo and duos. I do think that that's something that they need to do. I don't I had a fucking miserable time with that alpha. It was not fun. A darker tone that delivers on the themes of the original trilogy almost sounds like they're like, we need to rip out a lot of the art because it turns out it's not ours. So what can we? I mean, people are saying they want it to look. People are saying they want it to evoke the original Marathon. Why don't we give them that? I wonder if it's going to be a dramatic shift. I wonder if they are just going to jack up this thing on the fucking rack and take all the old art off and put new art on it. That would be fucking crazy. Making combat more tense and strategic. I don't know. That sounds like the opposite. I don't know. There's I almost wish one of the bullet points was this extraction shooter thing. Not enough. We probably need to put a whole nother game in here somewhere that for people that don't want to deal with that bullshit. But this is this seems like the right move for the game. Between the art thing and looking at what that alpha was, that was not going to that game as it was. If it was that and just a lot more of it, I don't think that was going to work for most people. That doesn't look like a successful video game. I can't sit here and tell you that from reading these bullet points that, oh, there we go, this is going to do it. But this is at least an acknowledgement of some people want to not play in a squad. And yeah, I don't know, more challenging and engaging AI encounters seems like something of an acknowledgement of oh, if we put more kind of PvE stuff in this, maybe that's the thing that softens a bit of the extraction shooter kind of stuff. But we'll see. We'll see. Minecraft's vibrant visuals update is out today. They announced this a while ago. It's been they let you just download preview kind of beta versions of Minecraft these days. And so this has been something that you've been able to download on their kind of test version for a good long time. It's a nice upgrade. It is not like full-on path traced lighting. It is not SUS renewed. It is not, like all the fucking crazy shit that they did for the Java version or the mods did for the Java version. But, it is a much nicer looking version of the game than what they had before. I installed it and messed around with it for a while. I was pretty impressed with the visual upgrade. Again, I think there's more they could do just from a pure technical standpoint on the lighting and ray tracing and all of that horse shit if they really want to go down that rabbit hole all the way. But it is a very nice visual upgrade that I want to play. I reinstalled Minecraft. I've been fucking around with Minecraft for a little bit over these past couple of months here, and I want to play some more Minecraft. So I'm gonna play some more Minecraft. I've been stressed. I've been real stressed, and so Minecraft as a before bed, I'm just gonna go out here and just build a cave, man. I'm just gonna dig a fucking cave. There seems to be some Red Dead news about to hit. A couple of the voice actors involved. The voice actor for John Marston got out there and he said, "I've got such exciting news. I can't share it with you right now, and it's absolutely killing me. By the end of the week, hopefully sooner, you're going to, not this week, I guess, probably not as soon as tomorrow, but definitely before Friday. Oh my goodness," then this came from a live stream, by the way, which is why it's, "Oh my goodness, the news I have to share, and I won't be the only one sharing it." Eurogamer also reported that Red Dead Redemption 2 is getting ported to the Switch 2 alongside an upgrade for current generation consoles. I don't know that that's the announcement that they're going to make right now, but I do think that Red Dead will happen on the Switch too. But yeah, we'll kind of see what that announcement ends up being. And the SAG-AFTRA has ended its strike with the video game industry. They have forged a tentative agreement with the IMA, which includes a variety of video game companies like Activision, Epic, Insomniac, and Warner, and all this other stuff. It sounds like the agreement includes, quote, "the necessary AI guardrails that SAG-AFTRA had been pushing for," and so this means that voice actors can go back to work on game projects immediately, as of noon on the 11th, last Wednesday. I loaded up Destiny 2 for the first time in a long time. And it had been a long time since I played it, so when I loaded it up, it did that every time they start a new season or a new expansion or whatever, there's always a mission that they just force you into. And I went into that mission, and as it was starting, a thing popped up, and it just said, "missing dialogue." I said, "Hey, there are some missing lines." It didn't say why, but it said, "Here, there's some lines of dialogue missing here. We have turned on subtitles for you. We have enabled subtitles here for you. If you turn off subtitles manually, you will hear half a conversation and not see the other half of it." And it was a very interesting and fucking weird pop-up to see, but it is something that, presumably because of the strike, they were not able to get those voice actors in to record their lines of dialogue for this expansion. And so in its current state, they have these weird half-voiced cutscenes, which is an interesting way to go. I think, look, they're in a position where if they had gone and recast those voices with non-union actors, they would be seen as scumbags. If they had, they wouldn't be able to use AI versions of those voices without getting sued and all this other, So they it was an interesting and tasteful pop-up that didn't get into the reasons behind it, which is you kind of have to infer that like, oh, I guess that's probably come from the strike, huh? But it's probably the right answer. It's probably the best thing they could have done given the situation. So I wonder if they will go back and record those lines now and update that mission, or if they're just like, oh, whatever, no one's playing that mission anymore anyway, except I did. I always wonder about analytics in games like that, because here was my experience. I loaded up that mission, ran through it. It was longer than I wanted it to be because I wanted to just kind of jump around and see what stuff looked like. But I was like, well, it threw me into this mission. I guess I'll do this mission. I played through a bunch of it as I had food getting cold. So I was like, fuck this. God damn it. What am I doing? Got to the point where where respawn is restricted. And so you kind of have to get through the, you have to get through the whole, a boss fight without dying. Banged my head against that 4 or 5 times because I haven't played Destiny 2 in 6 months or more probably. And so I'm, not as good at it as I used to be. And I'm just like, fuck this. I was like, you know what? I got food to eat. Fuck. And I quit out of the game. And it made me wonder about analytically, if like, is there a statistic where they're just like, yeah, I don't know, man. We brought some people back to the game after 6 months. And then they play through most of this mission, died 4 times, and then quit. And we haven't seen them since. Is there any learnings to be gained from that? I wonder if there are more people in that boat than just me, or if I'm just the anomaly or something. But I don't know. It made me wonder what sort of stuff, or how they track it. Not necessarily what they track, but how much are they able to piece together? I don't mean like, do they know that was me or blah blah blah. I more mean like, is that a session that they can track completely, or is it more like separate data that they don't tie together? Like, oh well, we had we had this many returning players that hadn't been here in 180 days or more, and blah blah blah. How much did they get to? We had X percentage of players quit in this mission. Or do they know like someone did this and then bailed out of it for another 6 months immediately after, or not? I don't know. Anyway, that's it for the news. Why don't we get to some emails here? podcast@guard.bike is the email address. Let's see. Mason in Virginia writes in and asks about game genres. Do you have any game genres that need a break for a few years? I ask this after watching Summer Game Fest and its associated live streams, seeing all the games that are Souls-likes or roguelikes or proximity chat streamer bait games make me feel like we're running the same games into the ground. I think that game genres that need a break for a few years are games that I don't like, and they should make more games like the games that I like. Right? I mean, I think that's, if you happen to like those types of games, then you're like stoked, right? Or you're weeding through them and going like, actually, some of these are super bad. There are so many of these games now coming out that some of them are just not good, but the good ones are still good. Like that's what we're really talking about, right? I mean, I don't think roguelikes need to go away because that's just not a genre anymore. Or rather, there are very few games coming out that you could just straight up say, this is a roguelike. As opposed to roguelike having become shorthand for, here is just a video game that happens to be run-based and have some rogue-like elements to it. Meaning it is run-based and has some randomness, Every game now has that. First-person shooters with rogue-like elements. top-down turn-based games with roguelike elements, deck builders with roguelike elements. Like, those types of ideas have just been dispersed across all of video games. And so to say, I don't like roguelikes, like, what do you even mean by that anymore? Because that's such a widespread thing. Conceptually, do you just not like games that are procedurally generated in any way, shape, or form? Because I think that's a really narrow view to take also. But like, there's, and we see games that you could probably call Souls-likes, and I think there's a traditionalist approach to what a Souls-like is. And I do think we see a good number of those. But you do see games that are trying to take some of those ideas and mechanics and then spread them into other genres completely. Sometimes successfully and sometimes not. But roguelike, I think in particular, has become a meaningless term because A, you really mean roguelite, but also you don't anymore because the entire concept has been perverted 1,000 different ways. 1,000 different ways. So to say that you don't like roguelikes, again, no one is making roguelikes anymore. People is just making games with randomness. Nothing wrong with that. Or I guess I would say if you're truly burned out on all of those elements in every game, then boy, you must be really annoyed at video games. Which sure. Some people are really annoyed at video games these days. That's okay. That can happen as well. Streamer, what he said? Proximity chat streamer bait games. Whatever, man. I don't really care for that stuff. And I don't think that those games are always. I don't think you can just reduce those to quote streamer bait, because I think that there are a lot of social games. Like in a post Among Us world, like there's plenty of reasons to have social games and co-op games where things go weird, whether that's repo or some of this other stuff that I think that there are a lot of those that are like fun to play and people just play them with their friends and they voice chat and none of them are streaming and all of that. It's I don't necessarily love those types of games just period, and I will say I extra don't like streaming games like that for the same reason I don't like playing Among Us generally speaking, but I extra don't like streaming it, and I don't like any of those kind of social games like Werewolf or whatever, like all of that. The like social board game where you lie to other people, where it becomes like you're almost recording an actual play podcast. I don't especially like the genre of game, and this is maybe outside of video games, but the whole thing of like, I'm gonna improv and I'm gonna lie to you for the next 2 hours. And I, part of it is because I'm a pretty good fucking liar when I need to be. But like that whole subgenre of like the that became like super popular there for a while. Like, oh, we went over to so and so's house and we played this, and like, shut the fuck up. And then Among Us came out and kind of turned some of that stuff into video games, and we saw like a boom town form. Post Among Us of that sort of stuff. Like that stuff's fun. Like I don't, I just don't like doing it, and I especially don't like streaming it. It's just that whole thing of like it's a different level of being on, if that makes any sense. Where it's just like no, dude, leave me alone. Naveen in Ontario asks, are we past the era when a console could come out with 0 backwards compatibility and still be successful? The last one seems to be the Switch, but the Switch 2 was almost expected to be backwards compatible by fans and the press. Now, with rumblings of Microsoft's next generation being Windows-based, the main question is, how are they going to maintain software continuity with the previous generation? Do you think a console could come out? Yeah. Do you think a console could come out today with a library truly starting from scratch and still succeed in the market? I don't. I think that the expectation is that, especially, we're now in an era where games can last multiple generations too, right? Fortnite has been through a couple of console transitions now. The Destiny franchise obviously has been through some of that stuff, but but no, I think we have a lot of games that their lifespan is longer than a console generation, which is scary to think about. And the expectation is that you should be able to continue to play those games. And I think that it's a good thing, generally speaking. I guess I'll put it this way. I don't think that we are losing out on some mythical innovation because consoles have to be backwards compatible now. I don't think we're losing out on we had this great idea, but it would have been such a dramatic architectural change that we would have lost all our all the benefits of being in this ecosystem. I don't think that that's happened. I think if there is a revolutionary idea that is a literal game changer, that you could see a scenario where we lose backwards compatibility. And I think that a company like Nintendo is popular enough to maybe see that through if they supported the new system the way they would need to. But I think the thing that would change is you would see a much longer tail on the previous, if what came out after the Switch 2 was crazy, and it's it doesn't make sense for it to be backwards compatible because it's you wear it on your feet, or it's just or it's an ARM processor, it's not an ARM processor, it's this, that, whatever they change. I think the expectation would be the Switch 2 kind of needs to stay on the market for a lot longer than, you're not done with the Switch 2 until you replace it with something else that runs Switch 2 games. And so you'd almost think are they splintering into a multi-device strategy again, like they had with the 3DS and the Switch 1 or the Wii U or whatever. But I think the expectation on players' parts is that, their games come with them, and I think that the benefits of the hardware manufacturers, the benefits they get by that kind of it's like a soft lock-in, right? Where you're I own 900 fucking PlayStation games at this point. I have 1,200 Xbox games. I can't get a PlayStation because then I lose access to those 1,200 Xbox games. It kind of helps a little bit in that regard as well. Or it provides one more sticking point as to hey, here's why you don't want to bail on our thing, because we have this, and in a weird way, Game Pass almost chips away at that a little bit, because you're just well, I can always be subscribed to that on a piece, or whatever, and see it that way. But yeah. Chris from Long Island writes in, wanting to know if fighting games, as well as competing in them, make them one of the most expensive hobbies in all of video gaming. He says, for example, when I went to Combo Breaker in Chicago a couple of years ago, I spent almost over $1,000 going. That included things such as a hotel, flights to and from, the registration fee, etc. And then you also have other things such as fight sticks, for which some, depending on what you really want, cost up to $400. Not to mention EVO is held every year in Las Vegas, which is already an expensive city in its own right. So with all of that, I'm just curious what you think. I think that if you're serious about flight sims, that's way more expensive. I also think that any competitive game with that type of tournament scene is going to result in some travel. I don't think you can really say that the travel is part of the cost of enjoying those games. I like playing fighting games, and I have not traveled ever for fighting games. I mean, I went to Reno to see Mortal Kombat 3 before it came out, but I have not traveled to a tournament. I would like to. But I don't think that's something you can necessarily like competitive Pokemon fucking players are in a similar boat, right? Like, that's not a fighting game, but that's, they have to go to the finals. They end up in Hawaii. They've got to pay the hotel room cleaning fee after they check out, between the stink and the human feces they flung down the hallway. There's fees associated with that. Like, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, yeah, you get into like magic cards and some of this other stuff, or you get into non-fighting games, like, you go to like a Smash Brothers tournament or something like that. Like, at least they're not wasting money on soap. That's savings right there. Ryan in Atlanta wants to know, when a company like Microsoft wants to make a game like a new Fable, how does that work? Not very well, apparently. Oh, there's more. Does Microsoft put out a call to their studios saying, give us your Fable pitch, or does it start at the studio? I ask because of the reported state of development on that game. They're trying to figure out what a new Fable is has me puzzled. If they're trying to figure out what it is, why are they making it? I'm not trying to talk shit. I'm just genuinely curious. So, there's sometimes you're making a game and you make a lot of guesses and you form a lot of hypotheses based on how you think it's going to go, and then things change. Or you have people in a position to say, like, we think the Fable needs to be this way now. And they start making that game and then realize, like, oh, dude, this sucks. Or those people leave and we're like, thank God those people are gone, because they were trying to make a Fable game with no humor in it. And what the fuck are we doing if that, like, why would you do that? Like, who greenlit this? Why did this even get and we need to recalibrate what this is because it's so far off course. And, things happen, right? Humans make these decisions. And sometimes things don't work out and you got to try to, figure out what the hell you're doing. And so I don't know specifically how Fable got started, if it was something where Playground Studios said, we need to not make a driving game. We have other people do, maybe it was something that they just came up with a build. They came up with a couple of concepts and put a build together and pitched it. And maybe that was the way to go. Or, I'm sure there are definitely cases where, they go like, oh, we're open to making this if we get the right pitch. And so, like, you have to wonder, like, how many, like, do you think that there were a lot of companies inside or teams inside of Nintendo, as well as teams outside of Nintendo trying to pitch a new Star Fox, just for example, right? Like, how many, like, oh man, we should make a new Star Fox. What would you do with Star Fox? Oh, I know what I would do with Star Fox. And then they find a place to pitch it to someone who would greenlight the project, and then they just go, nah. Like, okay, well, all right, we'll go back to making whatever we were making. Like that sort of stuff, I'm sure happens too. But it probably happens both ways. There are probably some cases where a studio wants to make a thing, they have a great idea for a thing, and so they pitch it in some form. And there are probably also some cases of just like, hey, it's been X amount of time since this game has had an entry. We think that there's a real opportunity for this to break through if it's the right team and the right studio. Does anyone want to pitch, like, we're looking at pitches on this. I know when EA had the Star Wars license, there was a brief period of time where they kind of went to every single studio that they owned and said, pitch us some Star Wars stuff. We got this license. We don't, we got some games in the works, but like, we could have more. So if you've got some fucking big ideas about what we should do with the Star Wars license, now is the time. And so, some of these studios took a handful of people and carved them off and said, all right, sit over here and figure it out. See, what do you think we should do with Star Wars? And, a bunch of studios, I think, pitched Star Wars games to the central team at EA. And then, I don't know what ended up getting greenlit. That was a long time ago, but, I heard about a handful of Star Wars games that did not get picked up as a part of that process. Let's see here. Jeff from Queens writes in with more Intellivision Amico news. I know we've all been waiting for it. Says, the final Intellivision Amico update? The corporation behind the groundbreaking Intellivision Amico console, Amico Holdings LLC, has tragically been suspended by the California Tax Board for delinquency. The last entity of Tommy Tallarico's Intellivision/Amico after they were bought out by those dastardly corporate bigwigs at Atari with all the millions they made on those speaker hats. What will this mean for those of us still expecting to have their refunds processed by 2028? Yeah, so that's, yeah, it looks like that their company has been suspended by the California Tax Board for delinquency on taxes. It seems that they are not in good standing. And that they owe the state of California $440,198 in unpaid taxes. Yeah, well, so yeah, I think that, you know, that's, oh, I'm sorry, that's the Delaware Corporation. They registered in Delaware, and so that Intellivision Entertainment Inc. owes $440K. So that is a technically different entity than Amico Holdings LLC, which I don't remember which one that was, but anyway. Yeah, as a lot of the Intellivision classic rights got dealt off to Atari as a part of that last sale so that they could sell Intellivision speaker hats, which is very funny. The Amico thing was never going to happen, right? I mean, past a certain point of, like, let's say 2019 or 2020, it seemed pretty obvious that the Amico was probably never going to actually happen. They are selling some kind of Android app that you can buy a couple of games on or something, and some of those games have been dealt to the developers who have published them on Steam. And so there's a limited number of those games that did see the light of day in a different format. But yeah, I don't think everyone's getting refunds on their Amico investments or sale. Well, certainly not the investments, but, you know, people who pre-ordered an Amico, I doubt they will probably completely run out of money and file for bankruptcy or something before they give all those refunds out, I'm assuming. I could be wrong, but I do suspect that a lot of people will be left holding the bag when that thing finally, like, folds for real. Because, like, what even is it at this point? It's not, you know. It's a shame. I don't know. Like, people get very mad about this stuff, and, like, I look at it and go, like, a lot of the stuff they were saying about what they wanted to do didn't make sense at the time that they were making it. Just like, if you were doing the math, if you do the math, it's not 64-bit, but there was just a lot of stuff there that was never, just never made a ton of sense. Part of the initial pitch, you were like, okay, I guess, yeah, you're going to make a family game system that uses these phone-like controllers. Like, yeah, you know, in a world where Jackbox is a thing that uses phones as controllers and whatever, you could see a world where, like, oh, what if you made this and it was like a billion different Jackbox style games? Like, there's something there to that, I guess. But, you know, that was not quite the approach they were taking. And, you know, they were saying all kinds of bullshit. Like, oh, Earthworm Jim's coming to the Amico. Like, I don't even think that's... Yeah, right. But yeah, you know, the whole thing just seemed off from the start, and that's a shame. I don't know. You saw people, like, there were people who were very wrapped up in this thing in ways that, like, no sane person should be. like there were people making YouTube videos about how stoked they were for the Amico that just like, I don't know. It just seemed impossible to have like a regular routine level of like this stuff. Like you just like look at it and just go like, where are you people coming from? Is there just like, there are people who were like, I don't know, man, we were on a voice call with Tommy Tallarico and he said we were cool. And like, okay. Oh, so you're just like losers? Like, I don't know. Like, what is like the people who would be sucked in by that would be enough for you to do? All right. What? Okay. All right, guys. Oof. But like, you know, that doesn't, that's just, you know, that it's just a very bizarre bunch of situations with that stuff where like that whole thing was happening. And you would have these people, you know, I would see these videos once I started like going down the rabbit hole a little bit. You would see these videos from these people going like, guys, in 2 weeks, the Amico is going to be here and blow your mind. Like these people just like with no substantiated anything, just making YouTube video after, and the videos were not like doing like super well. It wasn't like they were like, well, I've got to keep making these insane YouTube videos because the money's too good or we're making this or that. But it was like, you know, these videos with like 5,000 views of people just going like, the Amico is going to change everything. And I've seen some stuff that I can't tell you about that when it happens in the next week or two. And then the next video is like, that stuff got delayed, but trust me, it's going to change the world. When it's just like, what the fuck? It was just like people, I guess, you know, like people have never had anyone pay attention to them in that way, you know, and you're just like, you know, that you're willing to jump on board of this bandwagon just because like, I don't, what someone you saw on Canadian television said that you were cool. I don't know what I don't know what the fucking value is there. It's insane to me. Right. But, I don't know. Like it seems like a lot of people got sucked in by the pure charisma of, yeah, I don't know. Like, but it was just really wild to see some of that stuff. Because it felt very divorced from reality, and I don't know. Like the videos weren't doing well. It's hard to imagine a scenario, and people immediately want to go like, oh, these people are being paid and this and that, and those videos were not doing well. If someone was paying someone to make positive videos about the Amico, then everyone was getting ripped off because no one saw those videos unless they were like deliberately looking at them, looking for them for a good laugh or something. Like just like insane. Just screenshots of Facebook groups of people that just like, and you just look at it and go like, these people have to be fucking shitting me, man. Like, there's no way that, like, you know, the people are like, we're true believers for the, it's like, no, you're not. You're just like assholes like me when I was 19 with a bunch of free time on your hands pretending to like the Amico, right? There's no way that this is an actual person, you know, like, actually, maybe these were actual people. Holy shit. Just weird. Just the whole thing. Weird. But like, you know, the core nugget of the idea there of like, hey, we bought the Intellivision rights. Like, yeah, I think they came into it with like, I don't think they came into this thinking like, we're going to scam a bunch of investors. I think they came into it going like, hey, we see a spot in the market where this thing could actually like happen. We see a world where maybe this is a thing that people want and need. And I think that they were off the mark in a lot of ways, but like, I don't think that they were being disingenuous at that time. I think they were trying to make a thing happen. They ran into, you know, the same pandemic, you know, supply chain bullshit that everyone else did, but they had no funding and no wiggle room to cope with that. And then, you know, I think every bet they placed was a bad bet, you know, like turned out to be like, oh, this is not a thing that people actually want in any sort of degree. And these needs are being met elsewhere in a lot of cases. And this is not actually a thing. And look, you know, the Intellivision is beloved, but not beloved by a huge number of people that are going to float a new version of it for a new, like, yes, Shark is back. Like, you know, it's just no one fucking cares, dude. And so the whole thing you just look at and go like, you know, yeah, they bought some IP and tried to leverage it in ways that it probably was never going to be able to be properly leveraged. and they made a bunch of bad decisions and bad guesses about what they were going to do. And then the pandemic hit and that fucked them up too. And, it's just like, whatever, all that shit that comes together. And then, when scramble time hit, everyone showed their ass, right? That guy came out and said like, oh, anyone who hates the Amico is like a bunch of gaming racists, like they just like quadrupled down on the stupidest shit they could have said. And so, they did not have the character to make that work as a group. That. So as soon as the road got tough for them, they had nothing to weather that storm. They had nothing to fall back on in terms of just like, all right, we're gonna, as things continued to spiral out of control, instead of just kind of saying like, dude, this is really hard. We're doing everything we can, but it's really fucking hard. Instead it just became like, oh, 2 weeks from now we're gonna have this and this is gonna change. It's like, nope. Grant asks, this will actually be the last one. Is the Raspberry Pi dead? This is actually a good question as someone who just fucked up and bought a Raspberry Pi again. Once every few years, I go like, man, I should buy the fucking whatever the current Pi is and do some weird shit with it. And then I get it and it never works as the way I want it to. And then blah, blah, blah. I started to notice enthusiasm started to decline after the Raspberry Pi 4, and the 5th seems to have no development for it at all. Still not a word on a retro Pi image. I think why I loved the Raspberry Pi was that it was like 20 pounds, money wise, and I could plug it into a standard USB port and HDMI, whereas now it's more like 80 pounds, and I have to buy a stupid micro HDMI or whatever it is, and its own USB-C power supply because it needs more power now. I think they missed the point as to why it was so good when it came out, and you find yourself 150 quid in to get the thing running, and you can just buy so many other things at that price point. So I bought a Raspberry Pi 5 thinking like, oh, well, this is the most powerful one, so I'll get one of these. But it does feel like native support or the regular like emulator support for the Pi 5 kind of didn't materialize the way that it had prior. And so, yeah, there's definitely like a weird, like, oh, all these builds of things that run on a, are super old now, and you can't necessarily just pull nightlies for it and have it work. And so, yeah, that sort of stuff changed with the Pi 5 a little bit. But Raspberry Pis are used for a lot more things than just fucking emulators, right? So, like, all of that stuff is alive and well. So I would not say that the Raspberry Pi is dead by any stretch of the imagination. But it is the case that, like, if you're just looking for, easy to install images of things that you can install on a Pi 5, it is true that there was kind of a weird thing with the Pi 5 that just didn't get supported natively the same way that previous renditions of that hardware did. And again, yeah, when you talk about price and the price of a current Raspberry Pi and all, if you're doing storage and stuff too, the price does get up there to a point where like maybe you would be better served by one of these retro focused handhelds or, or a lot of other types of devices of that nature. Like if you're just purely coming at it from, I need a fucking emulator thing, then yeah, you do start to run into price point considerations where you're like, actually, maybe this is a better way to go with it. But like the hardware itself, the whole thing itself is so malleable. There are so many things you can extend. You're plugging into the fucking GPIO pins and doing all kinds of crazy shit. Like the Raspberry Pi platform is immense in ways that it's impossible to know. There's so many things happening all the time. And that's awesome. But yeah, I think as an emulator device, I think like there's just some, I don't know what it actually is about the 5, about what changed. Is it 64-bit only? And so a lot of the other stuff was 32-bit. I don't know what the exact, I knew that I had the answer to that question at some point, but I don't know it off the top of my head. But the Raspberry Pi 5 is not as well supported as the Raspberry Pi 4 and before was with the appropriate emulator like projects and such. So yes, from that extremely specific perspective, yeah, the Raspberry Pi doesn't seem like it's happening the same way that it used to. But again, the Pi is used for so many. Sometimes I want to build a Meshtastic node. I don't know, man. I just read about shit and I'm like, oh, man, that'd be fucking cool. I should set up a Raspberry Pi and do this. I got a Flipper Zero, and that's got pins on it too. I'm sure I could hook that up to a Pi. Probably not a Pi 5. I'd probably want like a smaller one or something. But yeah, I don't know. It'd be fun to have time to do a bunch of weird shit all the time, but I don't. And a lot of the stuff I would use a Raspberry Pi for now, in terms of just like server architecture and all that. Like, I'm just running Docker containers on a Windows machine that is my like the house Plex server and all that other stuff, and I can just run Docker on that, and most of the stuff I'm trying to do, I can just do that way. And so the need to have a dedicated Raspberry Pi for that is a little lessened by that, because I can just run all the stuff. The stuff that I'm trying to run all runs there, and so I haven't needed to build a separate machine. Sometimes I think it'd be fun to build a smaller and more efficient server for that stuff, because right now it's literally a fucking Alienware PC sitting out there with a DAS plugged into it that is full of 24 terabyte hard drives. And it's awesome. Don't get me wrong. It's fucking rad. But in some ways it's overkill to have like a 2080 Super sitting out there. But also I have a 3090 sitting here that's doing nothing, that I'm like, man, I could plug that in there, but the Alienware's case isn't long enough to hold it. So what are you going to do? Silly. The answer is, it's all silly. Anyway, that's going to do it. Thanks everybody for listening. And that's going to be this week's edition of the podcast. If you want an ad-free version of the show, you can get it at patreon.com/Jeff Gerstmann. Go look it up and check it out. Get a bonus show, all that sort of stuff. Go have some fun with me on Discord. Yay! And bonus shows and all that other stuff. So yes, check that out. I will be back Wednesday. We'll stream some video games. I don't know what. Maybe we'll play some Firebreak. I don't know. Maybe we'll play some Firebreak. 2 hours of Gex Trilogy. No, I'm uninstalling the Gex Trilogy. I just don't need that in my life. Have a good rest of your week, and I will see you tomorrow, Friday, and of course, next Tuesday, right here, with another edition of this podcast. See you then.